Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, January 12th meeting of the Bennington Select Board. We are in the third floor multi-purpose room at the Bennington Fire Facility at 130 River Street in Bennington. My name is Tom Haley. I have the honor of chairing this board, and I will ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves, starting with Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy White.
Good evening, Jim Sullivan.
Good evening, I'm Jackie Matz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clark Adams.
And I'm Ed Woods.
Also with us this evening is Dan Monks, Town Manager. We have Nancy Lively, who is going to take excellent minutes. As always, we have Taver Coulter from Cat TV, making sure this goes out to the community. I think first order of business, we need to amend our agenda for this evening, as indicated in our budget meeting on Saturday. It was afternoon at that point. We need to hear more from Bill Carmada, the director of the Bennington Rescue Squad, before we can finalize our budget. I'm going to suggest putting that after item 7 to let our presenters who are here on time do their presentations. Could I have a motion to that effect, please?
A motion that we had amend the agenda as requested by the chair.
And I'll second that as item number 7A if we were staying with this budget, with this agenda.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. So now we will begin our meeting, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ed, could you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And since I've neglected to ask anyone to read our vision statement, I'm going to ambush someone. Ed, you want to handle that this evening?
Wow. Hold on.
Somebody better give me a cheat sheet. Here it is. Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from our outstanding quality of life.
Thank you very much, and apologies.
I don't mind a little ambush.
There you go. Next up, we have our consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of December 22nd, the warrants, and the licenses.
And you saw the update to that, Tom?
Yep, the updated licenses list. And if anyone didn't see that, I have a copy here I can show you. For the purpose of discussion, could I have a motion to accept?
I'm looking at the minutes quickly here, and it looks like we did have a board member absent, so for the purpose of discussion, I'll move that we accept the minutes only of December 22nd, 2025.
The updated licenses.
Any discussion? Do I have a second on that?
Well, what's the updated licenses, please? I don't have that in front of me.
Can you look at your email? No.
It's not printed out.
I have my folder. Here it is. Pass that down. Okay, so any discussion, did I have a second to discuss, to accept the minutes? All right, so any discussion on the minutes?
I have none.
All right, seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And abstention?
One abstention.
One abstention. All right. Thanks very much. Now, the warrants and the licenses.
I move to accept the warrants and licenses.
I can second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on the warrants or the licenses? Nancy?
Page 9, 404879, paid to Whitecap LP. Precast supply is $814. Depot Street Bridge rebar, $29,000. Does the precast go with the rebar for the bridge?
So the rebar is for the bridge. The precast supplies very likely is for the bridge, but it could be other precast concrete supplies. It's not specific enough to be sure, but very likely.
Did we put the money in the budget we're in right now for Depot Street?
Well, we do have funds enough for the rebar, but not for the actual construction of the project.
Okay.
So this is for some of the materials to go ahead and start doing the precast work for the bridge.
But for where I'm seeing 29,000 for the rebar.
So you recall we do have a bridge reserve, so they're probably drawing from that.
Okay, I thought we used that up for the bridge on Main Street.
No, we did not. Not yet. That's over time we will.
Okay.
But that is for the Depot Street Bridge. Yeah.
Question.
Clark.
You said we use it's on. Use the reserve for the Main Street Bridge? I thought that was a state-funded bridge.
I'm sorry? Oh.
So we have to pay a percentage of that. That's our match, and that's where that reserve, a portion of those reserve funds will go towards that. Okay. A good portion of it, actually, unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Anything further on the warrants or licenses? All right, seeing nothing, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I see no abstentions, so thank you very much. Next up, we have public comment. Remind everyone that the public comment period is to provide information to the town on items that are not on the agenda. Please do keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. This is not a time particularly for asking questions, although if any questions are raised that we can handle quickly, we will do so at the end of the public comment period. So please take your seat and we will address anything that comes up as appropriate at the end of the comment period. First up, we have Aaron Williams and, is that Andrew Hall? All right. On Bennington Community Cafe and Bike Hub event.
Good evening. Is it? It is. Good evening. Erin Williams, Bennington, Vermont. I'm here on behalf of the Bennington Community Cafe, and Andrew is here on behalf of the Bike Hub. We are having another one of our wonderful crossover events that we started at the end of 2025. This will be another cafe and Bike Hub group ride that starts at the Bike Hub and will end at the cafe. And we will have a wonderful art activity for people to participate in that Andrew can talk a little bit more about after. But it'll be this Saturday, January 17th. It will start at 12. The cafe opens for food service at 1:30 and ends at 3. So people, once they finish with their ride, are welcome to hang out for as long as they would like at the cafe. And Andrew's going to talk about the actual bike route now.
Hi there, my name's Andrew. So you touched a bit about the route. I guess first off, bike ride in January. It's cold out. We have gear for that. So we have a winter gear lending library where we have cold weather specific riding gear you can use for this ride. The route itself follows some of this over here. So we typically do the rail trail, we'll do the ninja path, kind of loop over on some of the multi-use trails headed towards the middle school, high school, and then over to the cafe. So relatively short ride, super family friendly, you know, bring the kids in a bike trailer type of thing. Typically somewhere around 5 or 6 miles, starting at the shop and ending at the cafe. And again, bike riding in January, it's cold, we have gear for that. So if you don't have the gear you think you might need, we do have it. And yeah, that's about all. I hope to see you there. Oh yes, art. So we also are doing art project involving making wreaths with bike wheels. So we have, you know, wheels from the shop that you can kind of make like wreaths out of more evergreen stuff. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. Thank you. I think that's about all. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much.
Sounds like cold weather is not an excuse.
No. I'll see you there.
That's what I'm thinking.
All right.
How much hot chocolate?
Yeah. Or Mo said it.
Next, we have Jack Rossiter Munley, Bennington County Multicultural Center events.
Yes, thank you. Jack Rossiter Munley, Bennington, Vermont, and I am here about 2 upcoming events involving the Bennington County Multicultural Community Center. The first is going to be this coming Monday, which is Martin Luther King Day. There's going to be an event at the Bennington Theater, which is being hosted by the Greater Bennington Peace and Justice Center. It's an annual event that they've done for quite a few years now, and it's going to feature Garland Nelson, his Joyful Noise Spirit Choir, and their six-piece band. The event is going to support the work not only of the Greater Bennington Peace and Justice Center, but of the Multicultural Center and the Rutland Area NAACP. So come down for a really wonderful evening of music. It's going to include gospel songs, protest songs, and you'll also get to learn more about the work that the Rutland Area NAACP has been involved in, and also the work of the Multicultural Center. So again, that's going to be 6:30 at the Bennington Theater on Monday, January 19th. Come by and have a good time. The other is just a quick save the date. There's going to be an open house at the Multicultural Center on Friday, February 6th. It's going to be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and more details about that will be coming out very soon, but want to make sure you all have time to get that on your calendars. So 6:30 at the Bennington Theater on January 19th, and 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. on February 6th at the Multicultural Center at 120 Union Street.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Next, we have Representative Greer with a legislative update.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year, by the way. I think we can still say that, right? Okay. So session started this week. We're going back for week 2 now. So things are just getting started, but there are already several bills that are already being introduced on a range of topics. I'll cover those once they start getting weeded out, because it's just, there's so many of them. Everyone wants to get something done, and it's just, we only have so much time. I'm going to go through about 4 things, I believe. So the first is news related to the town. So our charter amendments are going to be introduced this week. I'm going to be the lead sponsor on this process, and that was encouraged after speaking with our town's legislative delegation, so I'll be coordinating that effort throughout the coming weeks and months. So just think of me essentially as the attorney for the charter amendments, but just for clarification, I'm not an attorney. We have great people that are attorneys, though. So anyone that has comments or concerns, just come speak to me or send me an email, and I'll share that with the committee. So again, email or phone number is fine to get in touch with me about any of the 4 amendments. The legislature on education, because that's going to probably be the most predominant theme that we're facing this year, is not moving forward with any mandatory district consolidation. We're waiting on information related to the foundation formula. So we're going to hopefully get that here in the next few weeks when reports start coming back. On the property tax relief front, the legislature will consider the governor's proposal, and I think we're going to look to it pretty positively to use an additional $75 million of surplus revenue from the general fund, and we're going to just do a fiscal analysis of that over the next coming weeks, and we'll probably know more around town meeting day. On health care, Vermont was awarded, I believe at the end of last year, $196 million that we'll see each year for the next 5 years to go towards rural projects. So for clarification, Chittenden County is not included in that. It's for all other 13 counties in the state, so that's really good news for us on that front. But of course, provider tax revenue that was capped in that federal budget is part of that $196 million. We're going to have to re-examine that, because that will be detrimental to Vermont's healthcare funding past 2031. Just want to say it's a ways out, so we have time. But a sizable portion of that money has already been allocated through AHS when they put in our state's application, so they have not released those details to me, at least. It may be somewhere online, but I will wait for them to give me that report. Lastly, final note, I just want to give a warm congratulations to one of our young and talented students at Mount Anthony Union High School, Abe Woods. I just want to say that I was glad to nominate him for this award for the John Lewis Youth Leadership Award that the state of Vermont gives out through the Secretary of State's office. He was one of 6 student finalists in the state, and I believe the only one from Southern Vermont. So we're so proud that he brought home the gold, figuratively, because he's going to bring home some gold on those skiing tournaments, and just representing Bennington County. So I wish he could have made the ceremony today. I wish we all could have been there. But for now, that's it, and we'll get more to you guys when session keeps going on. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Will.
Tom, I need to just chase that for 1 second. My son was sent in his regrets because he needed to be at cross-country ski practice today in prep for a race tomorrow, and the race for tomorrow got canceled because there's no snow wherever it is that this race was taking place. So we were all bummed when we got this news after it would have been too late for any of us to get to Montpelier. So, Will, thank you, and thank you to the delegation. My son is very proud.
Great. Next, Sherry Abendroth regarding property taxes.
Yes, I might be in the wrong place, but where do we get to go to talk about property taxes? I might be in the wrong place.
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, we had our budget work sessions the past 2 Saturdays.
Okay.
But we are going to be discussing finalizing the budget after we hear from the rescue squad later.
Agenda number 7A.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if it's general comments about property taxes.
Yeah, I think if you have a short comment right now on property taxes, we're happy to hear you right now. That's fine.
I paid $25,000 for my home, and I just wonder how many times over do I have to keep paying for it? I don't understand why they keep going up, and what am I paying for? So I'm going through the budget, and I'm looking, so I guess I just need to do more research, I guess. Because most of the money goes to healthcare and schooling.
Well, the school budget is separate from our budget.
Right. But they're saying the property taxes are going to go up by double digits in the school. But I've already paid for my house so many times over.
So if you're talking about school taxes, we do not have any control over that. Municipal taxes, yes, but school taxes, no. You would have to go to a school board.
Health services is municipal or school?
Excuse me?
The health care that we pay for, that's a big part of the budget, of the Vermont budget?
So I don't know, maybe you're confusing healthcare, but we do pay insurance for our employees, and so does the school. So
Okay,
that's
so
the
this is
healthcare
just
you're talking
local.
about?
Okay, so.
It may be benefits costs that we're talking about, Dan. School and municipal, but the cost to insure people is probably what you're referencing.
Okay.
And that would be on the employee medical benefits line, I think.
Okay, so I'll just do more research then, I guess. Okay, thank you.
And just your question about what your taxes pay for is a good one, and it's something that would take an awful lot of time to talk about right now, but I'm sure that any one of us or somebody in the town staff would be happy to go over the budget and what all the various components are. So
We have a very detailed budget with thousands of line items that we could show you where the money is spent. And we also have audits from all the past years, so you can see where all the money has been allocated. Yep.
And I would say the last 2 budget sessions that we had, about 10 hours of it over the past 2 weeks, are online and available to view the video. And so if you want to go as in-depth as we have, we've completed those at this point, but you can go back and watch all of the discussion we had, and that should give you a really good understanding of where all of the municipal tax dollars go towards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, we have Ken Millman on the Riverwalk.
Ken Millman, Bennington, Vermont. On Saturday, January 17th at 10 o'clock, the Walloomsac River and Downtown Walk will highlight an individual and an organization in our community. The walk will include a presentation of the Bennington Unsung Hero Award, which recognizes individuals who as volunteers have quietly gone above and beyond on behalf of our community. The Walloomsac River Walks, which began in 2021 as a vigil for Emily Hammond, has grown into a monthly gathering that uplifts community voices. This January marks the 5th anniversary of Emily's death. The Unsung Hero Award for January will go to Kelly Carroll in recognition for her volunteer service to our community. Kelly has called Bennington home for over 55 years and raised her family in the heart of downtown Bennington. Her life changed forever in 2021 when her daughter Emily was murdered. In the aftermath of that tragedy, Kelly transformed her grief into purpose, becoming a statewide advocate for victims' rights, public safety, and systemic reform. She has done a lot more in our community than work for victims' rights, and invite everybody to come down at 10 o'clock to the Riverwalk. We start at the skate park, and we're going to highlight the VFW after the walk. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Is there anyone that wanted to speak but didn't have a chance to sign up for public comment? Step right up.
While we're waiting for Deb to get to the mic, I'm realizing that Saturday is a jam-packed day of lots to do.
Debbie Matt, Bennington. I suppose I'm not talking to the board here. I'm talking to the public that I would like them to get involved, to understand what the budget is, that I believe it's online. I'm tech challenged, so I have to have a hard copy. And I believe there's still a few copies left at the town clerk's office, so you could go over and pick one up. And I encourage people to get out and vote, either vote for it or vote against it, but get involved to try to understand why it's what it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Deb and I had a conversation after the budget meeting the other day about that very subject, and I can only echo what she said. It's that it's very frustrating at the level of citizen involvement at these meetings is so low, regardless of what your opinion is. It can only help make things better.
And to Jackie's point earlier about the fact that all of that is available online for the last 2 Saturday work sessions, that might be something good to review and mark your notes and questions so that we can dig right into what the specific questions are that you might have. And I don't know if this would be helpful to the public, but I know that it's helpful to me to look at those budget lines and look for a year-over-year change. That's when the conversations get started, as if it's different than last year.
Is there anyone else that wanted to speak? Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item number 5, the SVMC Cancer Center Addition Grant. Approval of a grant condition. This conversation will be led by Jason Morrissey.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Jason Morrissey. I'm here to represent the hospital tonight. I think you have in your packets in front of you a memo that I wrote to Dan and some information about what the hospital is trying to do here, so I won't repeat that. Very shortly and very simply, the hospital consists of approximately 18 different parcels, and I think you are all aware that the cancer center is being renovated and expanded. Part of the funding for that project is a $2 million federal grant that was procured through Bernie Sanders. Either Bernie Sanders or Senator Welch, I'm not sure which, not important. But in return for that $2 million of funding, the federal government does require what's known as a notice of federal interest to be placed on the parcel. In this case, it's referred to as the Pisano parcel, and that's because the Pisano family conveyed it to the town of Bennington, which is why I'm here tonight, for use in the delivery of healthcare services back in the 1950s. The Pisano lot is where the expansion of the cancer center will occur. The hospital can certainly justify $2 million of the $25 million project being spent on that parcel. That parcel, if you'd like to put eyes on it, if you were coming in on the Monument Avenue extension entrance, it would be what's kind of in front of you. So if you look off to the left as you come in, you see the cancer center, and that's coming a little bit more towards you as you come off of that driveway. So the request is very simple. Some of the parcels are owned by the hospital corporation. Some of the parcels are owned by the town of Bennington. This one happens to be owned by the town of Bennington, dedicated for use for the delivery of healthcare services. And we need the permission slip from the Board of Selectmen so that Dan can sign a notice of federal interest that will encumber that particular parcel for the useful life of the building. It is not a mortgage. It does not mean it has to be repaid. It just means the federal government put $2 million into the project, and it can be released at the end of the term of the useful life of the building.
Okay, so probably what I'm looking for a motion here for is to authorize Dan to sign the notice of federal interest that was included in our packet. I guess, could I ask that we waive the reading of that? Has everyone had a chance to read it?
I had a chance to read it. To understand it's another story. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, that's fine. We'll get to the question part. So could I have a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the notice of federal interest as presented in the packet?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that so that we can have the discussion that I know we need to have. Thank you.
All right. So, discussion. Nancy.
Jason, is there any chance in the future that our town could possibly lose this property, even in 50 years?
I don't, not realistically, Nancy, no, I don't think so. In what way? Maybe if you gave me an example of... Well,
as I'm reading through this and I'm seeing kind of, so many years, I didn't know if down the road in 40 or 50 years, somehow if this money is tied to, well, somebody else could come along and say, we'd like to purchase this property and the town will no longer own it.
Okay, I understand the question. I'm going to say generally speaking, but I think I could say for any of the parcels that the town of Bennington is the legal owner of. The town is the legal owner of a good chunk of what we all think of as the hospital property. But on each of the deeds that came into the town, starting with Henry Putnam in 1912, and this is one of the later ones in the 1950s, but there's been maybe one or two since then, and the hospital corporation itself is the legal owner of several others. In the deed I think it's, and there's a copy, I think, in your packet. If you look on the second page of that deed, you'll see some language that talks about it's being conveyed to the hospital for purposes consistent with, and it references a legislative act of 1912. And that goes back to the time, Nancy, when corporations were formed at that time, they were done by way of an act of the legislature. And the formation, that was the dedication of the hospital and the use of that property for the delivery of health care. So even if the town sold the property, which I can't imagine how that would ever happen, the land is encumbered with a requirement that it's used to deliver health care for the people of Bennington, Vermont, because that's what the hospital was chartered for in the legislative act that you see referenced in that deed.
But I'm looking at the original deed on that. It doesn't have the page where it shows Putnam Memorial Hospital was making payments on behalf of the village of Bennington to be used for health care going forward. So I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a chance down the road somebody else could say, we're going to do health care, but we're going to own it rather than the town.
I can't imagine how that would be. I suppose anything's possible, Nancy. I don't foresee that ever happening. But if the town were to convey the property at any time in over the useful life of that building, which, again, I can't imagine how that would be, the encumbrance, the cancer center would still be there, and the requirement that the property be used for the purpose that we're discussing, the delivery of health care,
And looking at...
would continue.
Sorry.
It couldn't go away.
And reading the description of the property, it doesn't include the house where the Fosters used to live, does it?
The Foster lot's a different parcel.
Okay, so that isn't included. And last, when this goes in front of the DRB later this month, the project does?
Actually, I think it's coming up. I'm not exactly sure when. Dan might know.
I don't recall.
I think it's the 20th I saw on the town calendar.
That's for the mental health facility, the youth facility.
Well, there's a couple projects going on.
If my recollection is correct, the cancer center's already been approved, but the mental health facility for juveniles is what's up.
Oh, I just looked at it today. Has it already gone in front of the DRB and this has been approved?
I believe it has, but it's...
I know I've watched a few DRB meetings where it was discussed,
Yeah,
and
I believe
they
it has
voted on many things.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think it was on the agenda last month or the month before when I came just to watch a DRB meeting. It had been canceled. I just want to make sure that we can vote on this if the DRB hasn't already approved it.
It's not relevant what the DRB decision is.
I was going to say, I don't think one has to do with the other. This is simply, the project is approximately $25 million.
Yep.
Most of that money was privately raised. A $2 million federal grant was provided, and I won't take your time, I think the department that it came through is listed in the information I gave you. But as a condition of that grant, the notice of federal interest must be placed on the property before that money is released. And effectively what that says is, we're giving you money to do what you said you were going to do, in this case, renovate an existing cancer center and expand upon the existing cancer center. And therefore, the property needs to continue being used for the delivery of health care. It can't be, and it can't be for several reasons. The biggest one, it's against the deed restriction in the 1957 deed, but that's the requirement from the federal government. Before this check gets sent, they need to see the notice of federal interest.
Ed?
This is just for clarity on the point that Nancy raised. I think that I read in here that requirement moves with any successor owners of that property if there was one.
That's exactly right. It'd be like a power line easement. That power line easement would continue. That's a terrible example to make, but it's something that most people would be familiar with on a piece of property where there's a power line that goes across it.
Yep.
Now, that's a deeded property right. And in this case, to your point, the restriction on the use is part of the property, just as much as the dimensions of it are. It's part of the property.
So I would imagine that even if a health system bought out SVMC, unforeseeable, but if that happened, that use would have to continue on these parcels that were deeded that way.
That's exactly right.
Thank you.
Ed, to be clear on your point, SVHC doesn't own this real estate that we're talking about. The town of Bennington owns it.
But SVMC is going to own the cancer center that they are building, that they're expanding.
What's that?
SVMC will own the cancer center.
It's the SVHC. It's an SVHC building.
Yep.
But it's on town. The land is legally owned by the town for the beneficial use of the hospital.
This is a bigger question for tonight, though, but I just wonder if that structure makes sense. Since we will have to deal with this any time that there's something like this, why isn't that property deeded to the hospital corporation? And I don't know if I don't need to get into that tonight.
We don't want to get into that.
I've asked the same question, and the answer was that it's a long answer.
So that for tonight, but,
That one's above my pay grade.
All right.
Jackie, then Clark.
Yeah, hi Jason, thanks for being here. Maybe some pretty unlikely situations, but what would become of the parcel, the notice of federal interest if the building were destroyed by natural disaster, or, if it, maybe separately, if it was no longer needed for cancer treatment, if cancer is miraculously cured 5 years from now.
Well, it's the purpose for the notice of federal interest has to do with, as I've said, to receive the $2 million to put towards the project, the notice of federal interest needs to be granted. Not unlike if you purchased a home, you receive money from a bank, you give a mortgage interest back to the bank. This isn't, it's not a mortgage interest. What it is, it's ensuring that specifically, the property may not be used for any purpose inconsistent with the statute and any program regulations governing the award under which the property was acquired. It can't be mortgaged, and it can't be sold or transferred to any other party without the written permission of the agency giving the grant. So, Jackie, to use your example, and I hope you're right, if cancer were miraculously eradicated from the planet during the term of this, it would still be there for what it was awarded, and I have a feeling, and I can't say this for certain, but if to your question, if cancer was eradicated and there was no need for a cancer center, which I can't possibly imagine being true, but I still think we'd find use for that building for medical purposes. And I don't think the federal government would be looking to claw back money granted for cancer treatment after cancer was cured, to use your example. I think that's kind of a far-out example that I'm sure we all hope comes true.
Okay, yeah. Maybe also let's just go beyond the examples. If for some reason that property could no longer be used for those purposes, who would be responsible for repaying the $2 million to the federal government? Would the hospital corporation be responsible, or would the town be responsible?
Well,
for that
the
repayment?
hospital's the recipient of the grant.
Okay.
Clark, did you have a question?
Sure. It's one of those things, I don't know how much I don't know. But what thing pops in mind, confusing to me, this property, a plot of land, will continue to be property of the town of Bennington with the hospital using it for their building, or are we actually conveying this land?
No, there's no land being conveyed, Clark. This is an 18-acre parcel that was donated to the town from Vincent Pisano, which is why I refer to it as the Pisano lot. And the restrictions on its use continue with it. That is part of the property. The land isn't being conveyed from the town to anybody else. All that notice of federal interest is a notice that a grant was received by the hospital for use on that particular parcel, because that's where the expanded building will largely be. And that's the lot that if there was ever an audit at the hospital and the federal government wanted to see where did that $2 million get spent, the hospital could easily point to this land over the course of the project and say, this is what we did with your $2 million, and a lot of other money as well. And all this notice of federal interest says is, it puts restrictions on the property that it can't be mortgaged, it can't be transferred, nothing can happen unless it gets released. And then there's a procedure that is, you have to go through whatever agency in the government you have to go through. I believe it's in there.
Right.
And at some point in the future, I think the realistic scenario, Clark, would be 40 years from now, which is when the estimated useful life of the building, at least according to the schedules that I saw, would be. Probably that's when somebody, and I suspect, unfortunately, nobody in this room 40 years from now would be looking to get it released, and they would have to get it released.
No. Yeah, so again, that's in my simple mind, having purchased a couple of homes, I keep thinking of almost like a secondary lien holder. This grant you're giving ensures that that land can only be utilized just for what the hospital says, but you mentioned, they say, look what we do with the land. You really didn't do anything with the land other than build on it. So the fact there's building there, in my mind, that is where your money is, not the land. The money is not allowing the land to be transferred to you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
I was, again, thinking of this $2 million as almost as like a second mortgage, so to speak. This land is constrained. You've got this money. It can only be used for this, this, and this. So you mentioned an audit. If they look and say, what do you do with the money? Well, there's a building sitting on that land, but the land itself.
Well, real estate includes the improvements on the land.
Okay.
Like a building. And in this case, an expanded cancer center.
Okay. My final question. So this $2 million is not a pass-through. That's going right to SMVC. It's not, the town's not involved in that.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. That's why they have lawyers. It sounds more complicated to me, but that's fine.
Okay. No, good questions. Thank you for asking.
Thanks. I think it's clear that the purpose of this document that we're being asked to approve is to ensure that this parcel that the town owns is clearly documented for the purpose of the grant, that it continues to be used for the provision of healthcare services. And I can't imagine anything that would be a better use for the property. So I would suggest that we vote on this now and approve it.
And I think really what we're looking at here is, when it comes down to it, that the only change that will affect the town of Bennington or its citizens is that we'll have a better cancer center.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The only real change here that is going to be experienced by either the town or its citizens is that we're going to have a better cancer center.
A bigger and better cancer center.
And everything else is pretty much going to be the same as it always was.
That's exactly correct.
All right. Anything else, Nancy?
I just need to clarify who would own the new cancer center. I believe with the partnership with Dartmouth, Dartmouth will also be part owner, wouldn't they, in the new building?
They operate it. I mean, let's try to separate a few things here. There's an improvement called a bigger cancer center, for lack of a fancier way of putting it, that we placed upon the land, and that's the real estate. Who operates it, who works there, who else has funded it, who else has contributed to it, all those things are really immaterial to this. I think if you look at the signage, it is the DH Cancer Center as part of the signage. It's on the SVHC campus. The real estate where this is being built is what is at interest here, and it's the Pisano lot. So regardless of who is staffing it or who is operating it, it has to do with a restriction on the land where it exists. That's the important thing. Whether it's SVHC, DH, or anybody else, it creates a restriction that we gave you the money for this and you have to use the land for this.
Okay.
Ed?
I just have one more, and hopefully this is for clarification, and this will get me all, not picking on this anymore. It sounds to me like if I explain this again to myself, the property has no value in this. And the $2 million is going, part of the $25 million is going to improve the infrastructure of the cancer center. Again, the property, the value of the property is not in question here, and the ownership is not in question. So the $2 million has nothing to do with the value of the property. Am I right? Remember, I'm talking real estate only here.
Well, when you say real estate includes improvements on the real estate.
Okay, real estate minus...
The building we're in is an improvement on the land we're on, but it's all considered the real estate.
Okay, I got it.
So, in a sense, the $25 million project would certainly increase the value of... I would hate to see the project where $25 million was spent and it didn't improve the value of the land. I'm sure it's happened. I don't think this is one of those times.
I hope not.
It isn't. So I'm not sure I'm following your question. The $2 million is part of the funding stack for it.
I'm trying to separate out the property and any perceived value that it has to the town or to the hospital, and it really doesn't have any value because it's not just the land. And I know that the land now has improvements on it, but we have no interest, the town has no interest in the other assets there, aside from the property, undeveloped. Am I right?
Well, correct. You are, in a sense, Ed, this isn't I don't want to over-explain it and get too far into the weeds, but in a sense, one way to think about this would be the town is the trustee who is the legal owner of it, but the trust is for the benefit of some other entity, and in this case, the hospital, so it can deliver healthcare services. That might be a different way to look at it. There's not a trust involved, but the concept is the same. And in this case, the town is the trustee for that 18 acres. And on a little sliver of it right now, this cancer center already exists. More of it's the expansion of it is kind of coming onto this part of the property. And that's why we'd like to have it put on, we'd like to have the notice of federal interest put on this parcel, because if the hospital was asked, well, wait a minute, we gave you $2 million, show us where you put it, because there needs to be a notice of federal interest on that piece of property. The hospital could easily go to the Pizzana lot and say, here's the expanded cancer center. Here's 3 stories of medical offices. Here's the infrastructure that's there. Here's that. That's why it needs to be placed on this particular lot, because this is where we can demonstrate we used your $2 million. We, federal government, we, the hospital, used the federal government's money here on this piece of property, and that's why the notice of federal interest gets placed there.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone in the public? All right, then I will call the vote. All in favor of authorizing the manager to sign the notice of federal interest as presented, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? And 1 member absent. So, motion is passed. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Jason.
See you in March.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, next we have Mark Anders joining us to discuss the Walloomsac Valley Path, otherwise known as the Ninja Path, authorization to bid. And we have slides.
There you go. Just click up there. And then when you're ready, go down to the presentation. And I'm right over there if you need. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mark Anders, and I'm a planner with the Bennington County Regional Commission. And I'm also the project manager for the Ninja Path. And I'm going to give you a very quick update tonight on the Ninja Path project and talk about next steps. So the Ninja Path project, let's see if it helps to point it in the right direction. Okay. I'm very tech challenged. So the Ninja Path project starts at the Bennington College entrance at the Peanut Roundabout. And by the way, the green lines are paths that have already been built, and the red are planned projects. So the Ninja Path project begins at the Bennington College entrance, goes along 67A, goes behind Hannaford's, between Hannaford and the river, and then goes under Route 279, and then crosses the Furnace Brook, goes behind the Morse Industrial Park, and connects to Harmon Road. There's an existing little section of the Ninja Path that goes behind Walmart that was built quite a while ago. And then goes on Hicks Ave and connects with the Bike Ped Bridge. So that's kind of the Ninja Path project. And the federally funded Ninja Path project is this area, stages 2, 1, and 3. So that's, when I talk about the Ninja Path project, that's what I'm talking about. And then just to put it in wider context, so this is a map of the planned Bennington path system, and there's a plan to do a path called the Walloomsac Valley Pathway that would connect Headwaters Park to Bennington College, and if you follow that sort of orange highlighted area, that's the route. So the Ninja Path is a very important part of that big vision. So it goes from Headwaters Park through downtown along the Riverwalk, up the rail trail, and then connects over to the Ninja Path. So we've broken the federally funded project down into 3 stages to make them financially feasible. And we completed stage 1 last November. And the next step is to construct stage 2. And the federally funded project, most of it, some of it was, there was a 10% local match, and for the stage 2, there will be a 20% local match. So I just want to show you a couple of pictures of stage 1 that was built last November. So this is looking towards Route 279 overpass. So this is where it crosses under the road. And the path is about 11 feet wide. So this is looking towards Furnace Brook. That's the Bennington Self-Storage Facility on Morse Road. And this is one of the bridge abutments that being constructed, the bridge that goes over the Furnace Brook. And this bridge, this is the hardest part of the entire Ninja Path project, so I'm really relieved that it's in. So the bridge was constructed off-site and was delivered, and then was lowered onto the abutments by a crane. And this is the bridge, the 80-foot center span being prepared to be lowered onto the abutments. And a really cool detail is you see these big pins. There's 2 sets of pins, and the pins had to fit exactly onto corresponding holes on the abutments. So it's a really exciting moment when they lowered the bridge. There was a lot of stress at the site would the bridge fit, and it fit. So that was really, really exciting. So this is the bridge lowered onto the abutment, and that's the final bridge. So I just wanted to show you that. For me, it was a really exciting moment because I've worked on this project. A lot of people, some other people in this room have worked on this project for about 10 years, so it's like, this is awesome. So as I mentioned, the next step is stage 2. And stage 2 is shovel ready. We have all the permits, we have all the easements we need, we have the federal funds. VTrans has approved contract, final plans. I believe they're about to approve the bid documents in the next couple of weeks. So stage 2 is 2,000 feet long. There's one small bridge, and the budget is $848,000. So 80% of that is covered by the federal grant. So the local match is about $169,000, $170,000. And that budget includes construction inspection, materials testing, a 20% project contingency. So I think what we're asking for tonight is permission from the Select Board to go out to bid for Stage 2. And my understanding is that the local match will be covered by Pennies for Parks. So Dan can correct me if I'm wrong about that.
Yeah, we do have, I've confirmed with Melissa, who's a big part of our discussions recently, that we do have sufficient funds. We will have sufficient funds in Penny for Parks Reserve to cover the local match for this project. And the reason we're here today is we really would like to get this out to bid as soon as possible. Usually bids that come out this time of year have a better chance of lower funding. If we wait till the spring, it will not only will probably put this off to another construction season, but the bids will be higher, and we'd like to avoid the inflationary pressure that we see each year. So the request, as Mark mentioned, is for the Select Board to authorize the town to go out to bid as soon as the state approves the bid documents, which we anticipate hopefully in less than 2 weeks, but no longer than 2 weeks. So that's why we're here this evening.
Sure. Any questions? Clark.
Maybe there's more for Dan than you.
Sure.
Wasn't there a discussion of the town actually performing some of this work on these trails, or was that another section we were speaking of?
So we did, and we actually chased that down with the state, and they, to date, have denied our request to do this as a force account work. We have not given up yet. There's another section, Stage 3. We still hope that we could convince them to allow us to do that, but that was actually the stage that we were looking at doing ourselves, was Stage 3, which is not what the subject of this bid is. So, but you're absolutely correct. We would like to and still hope to be able to do the work ourselves on that stage. But we were, just to be clear, that to date, the state has not accepted that request.
Is there a substantial difference in the work that we might do on Stage 3 versus Stage 2? If they've denied Stage 2, and looks like Stage 3 is a little more substantive.
Stage 2 has a bridge, which makes it a little different. And I think there's some more wetlands to avoid, but it's virtually the same except for the bridge, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Stage 3 is sort of the most straightforward, and that's the section that we had hoped to use the town Public Works Department using force account.
Okay. All right. I was just trying to get straight in my mind. I knew that was a discussion. I just wanted to make sure what was going on. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jim, I saw you next.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I just want to say I was doing my homework today, so I ran from my house all the way down to the Headwaters Park on the Williamsack Valley Path. So, and it is quite lovely, especially the parts that are completed. And and as far as Stage 3 goes, yeah, I would point out that I did not run on that part. I ran on Morse Road, which parallels it, and that will be a relatively easy piece to construct. I think it runs around the back of the industrial park, basically, and it's pretty straightforward. But the nice thing about Stage 3 is that at least Morse Road is there, so that it forms a connection between the section of the path behind Walmart and the part that's built. And I think the point I just wanted to make, and maybe Mark can follow up, is that right now we have an absolutely beautiful path that goes from by the self-storage buildings on Morse Road across a truly spectacular and expensive bicycle and pedestrian bridge over Furnace Brook, and then under the Vermont 279 overpass, and then it ends in a puddle of mud, and with a little foot trail going off to the left. So, I mean, I just want to make the point that this is a project that's been grant funded, that's underway, that the town has committed to doing, and this is the piece that needs to be completed to both essentially complete our commitment under the grant, and also to forge that final the final connection between the Bennington College and really, I mean, I ran right through downtown and all the way to Headwaters Park, and it was amazing how easy it was with no traffic and how safe you felt. So I guess that's a little bit more of a speech than a question, but I think I just wanted to maybe let Mark comment on the fact that it's a very nice path right up to the point where it ends.
You're right. It is a very nice path up to where it ends, and when you ride on it or walk on it and the path ends, it's very disappointing. It's like, why does it end here? So that's what we're trying to fix. We're trying to just connect it, and the town built this section already quite a few years ago. So we're really just sort of connecting those two sections that have already been built.
Nancy, then Ed.
Well, for the past year and a half, we've talked about Phase 1. And a year and a half ago, when it was announced we were getting a $2 million grant, nearly $2 million, I pointed out our share to the taxpayers would be $400,000. And then we've heard all the discussions, well, with the force account would make sense. But as of right now, we can't use the force account?
We have not been approved for the force account. We did have multiple discussions. I would say that we're not happy with the decision, and we haven't given up yet, but we do not have authorization to use force account for Stage 3.
So this came, the $400,000 from the taxpayers, but we said we committed we had to get Phase 1 done. Now I'm reading Stage 2 is shovel-ready. Well, to the taxpayers, this is close to $170,000 on top of the $400,000. And I question if the money is in pennies for parks. I thought the board voted 2 years ago to use that money on the skateboard park, $300,000.
So,
Shannon, when you talked earlier last year about the pickleball project at Willow Park, you said it was $150,000. And I said, well, that's $50,000 over what the taxpayers were going to put in pennies for park back in September. So if I'm looking at $170,000, I don't even know if we have money in there now. We'll put 102 in next September, but we're still short. So does anybody know right now how much money we have in pennies for parks?
So I know how much we will have, at least, to cover this amount, as well as if we go forward with the pickleball court. So let me first of all make it clear, this $170,000 is actually part of the match, the $400,000. It's not in addition to. So let me just clarify that. As far as Penny for Parks, I have confirmed with Melissa Currier, our finance director, and she'll be here shortly, that we do have enough money for both this local match and the pickleball courts, if that grant comes through, which we're a little bit incredulous it'll happen in a timely fashion, but if it does, by the end of FY27, we will have enough to cover both of these projects. So I would not propose us to go out to bid unless we had the money available for us to pay for this project, and we do in a dedicated account that can only be used for these types of projects. It cannot be used to do roadways or pay for wages or benefits. It is specifically reserved and dedicated by the voters of this town to this type of project.
So Melissa will be able to tell us how much is in the account right now.
Should be able to tell you that at least $170,000 and I think it's the $100,000 match for the pickleball courts will be available in Pennies for Parks by the end of FY27.
Okay, yes. But if the taxpayers are putting about $102,000 a year in October in Pennies for Parks, so that means next September and the September after, that's $204,000. So unless we have a lot of extra money now I don't know about.
All I can tell you, Nancy, is if you don't believe our finance director that we have the funding, I can't help you with that, but I can tell you that our finance director has assured me that we have those funds.
Dan, it's not a question of not believing. I'm just trying to get an accurate figure to understand. We'll have $102,000 from the taxpayers next October. And if it's another $102,000 the following year, that's $200,000. Between pickleball and this, I'm looking at 269.
270.
310.
It's 170 plus 100,000 when it's 270,000.
Okay, so the pickleball cost came down from 150 to 100?
We're going to use 50,000 in in-kind match, correct, Shannon? Yeah.
RJ made it clear that he needs a couple extra $100,000 for the highways. Well, RJ's got competition from the pathways, and at the end of the day, it comes from the people of Bennington to fund it. That's my worry.
Nancy, I was very explicit. There is no competition. We cannot use these funds for highway construction or maintenance. It would be illegal for us to do that.
No, but what I'm saying is we're going to be looking for money from the taxpayers for more pathways, correct?
We're using the funds that we have for Penny for Parks to fund this pathway project. We're not asking for additional funds.
Does that mean no impact to taxpayers?
It will be no impact to the taxpayers. That's correct. That's
what we needed to hear.
The Penny for Parks is part of the funding that has already been approved by the voters. So it is no increase to what has already been approved.
The taxpayers pay for the pennies for parks, so of course this impacts the taxpayers.
But they've already agreed to use that money for that.
Yes, it's already been approved by the taxpayers overwhelmingly. We do not have the authority to reassign these funds to anything other than parks and recreation.
So I just have a comment.
I promised Ed was next, and then you, Jim.
Thanks. I think this is really just a comment. You mentioned that this has been in the planning stages for 10 years. I want to tell you that we probably started the Ninja Path closer to 20 years ago. So I am really excited to see these lines starting to connect. And eventually, we're going to see all green here. And for those of you that have not been on the newly constructed path that's up at the top of your screen there, it's beautiful. It makes a huge difference, and I would encourage people to get out there and experience it if you haven't already. Just watch out for the mud at the end, I guess.
Thank you.
Jim.
It occurred to me that this part of the meeting is about questions on the presentation, and I don't think it's all been on that. And so I don't have a further question on the presentation, but if we want to get into making a motion, then I would be there after any public comments, of course.
Nancy?
If I remember correctly from the budget, aren't we charging the taxpayers $50,000 to put the pathway through the cemetery behind Stewart's and another $20,000 for a grant out on Morgan Street?
Point of order, this is a different project Nancy's discussing.
I'm just trying to figure out what we're going to be charging people for pathways, Jackie. It's part of the budget.
I do see your point, Nancy, but we are restricted by the agenda.
But again, this is, I heard somebody said this is supposed to connect everything from Morgan Street to Bennington College, correct?
This project that we're talking about, that's the subject of this discussion, is stage 2 that connects the existing pathway that ends near Hannaford over to the Vermont 279 overpass, and that's all that this is about.
And those other sections, as they get closer to fruition, will come before this board. But at this point, yes, you are correct that we're discussing stage 2 at this point, and then we'll discuss stage 3 when it's time to discuss stage 3, and any other additions when it becomes time to talk about those. But
well, it is a one continuous pathway that you're working
We are
towards.
Restricted by the agenda. Point of order, please.
Yeah, exactly. And
Point of order,
we
point
do
of
hope
order.
it to be one continuous pathway eventually, Nancy, but right now we're only discussing connecting those two segments in stage 2.
But we should have made it clear to the public 2 years ago, when we're looking for funding for this section, that there was also funding going to be needed for the other end of the section. It's all coming from the town taxpayers.
Actually, 80% of it's coming from federal funds.
I'm talking the local match.
Yes, that's correct.
Jackie?
Yeah, and one point of information, the local match for stage 1 was only 10%. A lot of the grants came with only a 10% local match. but they've changed the funding formulas, so the later grants we got are 20%.
Who determines what those match amounts are?
That was the legislature.
Jackie?
Jim alluded to this a few moments ago, but I recall the last time we discussed this, this board had contractually obligated the town to complete these projects, and there was some penalty or some funds that would need to be paid back if we don't complete the projects. Is that right? Can you?
Yeah, that's standard with federally funded infrastructure projects. They have something called the payback provision. So what the federal government doesn't want to do is, you get a large grant to build infrastructure and you spend lots of money on it, designing it and getting right of way and so on, and then just not following through and doing it. So there's a point where if you cross that project development point, you have to pay the money back if you decide to cancel the project.
So it sounds to me like this is something that this board, that our town has already agreed to do, and now it's time for us to do what we said we were going to.
Yes.
It's very, very, very similar to what we just discussed with the notice of federal interest. The hospital would have to pay back that $2 million if they did not follow through with the cancer center. So it's very common with federal funds that if you don't actually do the project you said you're going to do, they can claw back the money that you spent beginning the project. But we have committed to complete this project.
Which is significantly more than the $170,000 that we're talking about right now?
Absolutely significantly more.
Tom, if I could. So I think that what I'm hearing is that the finance director tells us that there is enough money being accumulated between now and the end of '27 to fund this project and the other project that's on the docket without any impact to taxpayers. So I'm going to vote yes to go out to bid on this for that reason.
I'd like to ask the finance director, how much money do we have right now in the Pennies for Park account?
You asked me that on Saturday.
I'm sorry, I should have called you, tried to get you today, but...
I don't have it at this moment.
Okay.
I have gone through the numbers to make sure that we had enough money to cover this. I'm sorry, I don't have it.
Do you remember how many years ago that we started getting charged? I thought we didn't start until after COVID. Sure. Have we been charging more than 4 years?
3 years?
3 years. Okay, well, that's what I'm thinking. Well, even if I say it's 4 years, that's $400,000. Well, between this money, between the skateboard park,
the skateboard park was in this year's budget, Nancy. In the 26 budget.
Okay, that's $300,000. So if we've only been paying 4 years, the most we can have left right now is $100,000.
I'm going to believe this finance director. You heard my thinking.
I'm just asking, how much do we have in the account?
You just heard the answer from Melissa that we have enough to cover these projects. I don't know what else we can tell you, Nancy.
All right, anything, Sarah?
I would like to keep our promise for this project so that we are not penalized by the government. It would be much more than the $169,281.60, and I want to see this project move forward. Furthermore, I'm prepared to hear from the public and after that make a motion, as is one of my colleagues over here.
To that note, anyone in the public have comments regarding this project? Phase 2.
There's cold weather gear at the bike hub for those that want to get out in January.
All right, so do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. right, on to the hazard mitigation plan.
Mark, thank you for that.
Tara Zink, thank you. Now, we've heard from you on this before.
Yes, so this is just wrapping up the work that we have done on this plan. I'm Dara Zink. I am with Bennington County Regional Commission. I was honored to work with the planning group that put together the Town of Bennington's Hazard Mitigation Plan. This plan creates a framework that is used to guide the town in risk reduction actions in order to minimize damages to life and property caused by natural disasters. We're going to see if it catches up here.
You're faster than the presentation.
Apparently. All right, so I'm just going to walk you through what it was just a recap of the work that we've done, so we don't need to see pictures of that. I can just walk you through that. In July of 2024, the process began by the creation of the planning team and the development of a public outreach strategy, which included a public survey, which was shared online via the town website with paper copies distributed around town and flyers with a QR code that were also hung at multiple locations from October 25th to November 22nd. Let's see if we can just move this right through. The planning team then assessed the risk to the community. Based on the risks that were top priority to the community, the planning committee then drafted a mitigation strategy to address the impacts from those hazards. In June, I appeared before the select board to present the plan, and then the plan was sent to Vermont Emergency Management, which I'll refer to as VEM, for review on behalf of FEMA. On December 11th, we were notified that the plan had been approved pending adoption by the Bennington Select Board. Lastly, the plan will be adopted. It will then be kept current via an annual review process, which will ensure that action items are being taken into consideration for budgeting in the development of other plans and as projects are being planned. We're gonna... Problem solving at its finest. All right.
We're doing tech support by committee here tonight.
That's right.
Because Jonah couldn't make it.
I know,
this
my
evening.
emotional support tech guy, Jonah's not here, so we're making do. The most recent version of the plan does include some minor changes to wording as suggested by VEM in order to meet the FEMA requirements. There was one change of note, the addition of the infectious disease outbreak as a hazard due to the financial impacts from COVID-19. They did come back and they wanted us to go over that because the town had received COVID funding. So we did add that. This is profiled on page 42. So there's a narrative about that and other infectious diseases in there, and then it only added one mitigation action, which can be found on page 77. It's number 18, and that's just to monitor disease occurrences and potential outbreaks, partnering with the Vermont Department of Health. So it added a few more pages, but overall, it only gave us one more mitigation action. So before I wrap up, I do want to acknowledge the planning team, which included the following individuals. I stole these from View the Hazards that impact Bennington and address the ones that are most important for the town. They've taken a plan that was once very boilerplate, and they really made it specific for the town of Bennington to achieve. So at this time, we are looking to ask for an adoption of the plan, and I can take any questions prior to that if you would like.
I think for purpose of discussion, let's have a motion to adopt the plan, and then we will go into discussion on the adoption.
Second.
All right. Discussion. Nancy?
On the front page of your memo, the very last sentence, it says the town maintains its emergency relief assistance fund rate at 17.5%. Would anybody know what that percentage is right now?
So I believe right now, You are at, I think you're at, if I remember correctly, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but because the current plan is not, well, actually, right now, you're already at 17.5 because VEM has approved this. Prior to that, because the plan had lapsed, you were at 7.5% for the ERAF rate. Does anyone want me to dive into what ERAF is real quick? Or does everybody remember? I see a lot of I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. See, so I stick these slides in here just in case. So it's the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund. When currently, under current regulations, federal guidelines, if there was damage to the town, let's say we have $1 million bridge and it's damaged, federal aid, if it's FEMA approved, FEMA will come in and they will cover 75% of that $1 million bridge. Awesome, right? But that leaves the town still holding 25% of that. If the town takes certain steps, we can increase that, okay? So the state will come through and they cover at a base 7.5%. Awesome, okay? So that takes down what we owe. So at that point, the town is responsible for the remaining 17.5% of our $1 million bridge. Make sense? Okay. This is if we do nothing. We're all just hanging out, hoping for the best. And if you do these 4 steps here, you are part of the National Flood Insurance Program, which Bennington is. You adopt the town road and bridge standards, which Bennington does. If you have your annual local emergency management plan adopted, which Bennington does on an annual basis, and if you have adopted a local hazard mitigation plan, that gets you 12.5% from the state, okay? So that leaves the town holding the bag only for 12.5%, okay? Now, if you do all 4 of those things, and you protect your river corridors, which Bennington does, the town is now eligible for the state to come in and pay 17.5% of those damages. So at that point, the town is only left holding the bag for 7.5%, right? Way better than the 25%. So at this point, Bennington has done that. VEM is counting this plan that yes, you've achieved all 5 steps at this point. So you have that 17.5% ERAF rate right now. Go ahead, Dan.
On the bottom of page 77, which you already referenced, the last sentence says, the proposed mitigation actions may also be considered for inclusion in the town budget in its development for approval by the voters on town meeting day. So does that mean the taxpayers could be asked to pay more? That's why we'd have to get voter approval?
No, I think that we're talking about a couple different things here. So that is not ERAF. If you are looking at the projects, right, if some of those projects come through.
I'm reading the last sentence in your report, talking about proposed mitigation actions may also be considered for inclusion in the town budget.
That's not ERAF. Are we on the same page for that one? We're talking about 2 separate things.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to find out and understand what is there going to be added that we would have to get voter approval for to put into the budget?
If there are projects within this mitigation plan that the town decides to take on that potentially need taxpayer funding, then it could go to the taxpayers at that time.
Is that the cost for the infectious disease outbreak, monitoring that?
No. No, that monitoring just happens by the health officer, just kind of keeps an eye on what's going on, and then they also work with health services to kind of monitor that.
But if this is the only thing that's been added since this got approved a while back, I'm trying to understand what we would be putting on a ballot for the voters to accrue that's tied to this.
Do you want to try, Dan?
Nothing.
Okay.
So this sentence shouldn't even be in here.
No, it's saying, Nancy, if we decide to do a project let's say that the flood wall needed repair.
Okay.
And we decided we were going to do that to make sure that we mitigate flood issues, then we would have to put that in our budget, and the voters would have to approve it as a budget, as part of the budget for us to do that project. That's all it's saying, that if we do, that we should be looking at this every year, and if there's a project that needs to be done, we need to put it in our budget and discuss it, and then the voters would vote on it as part of the budget.
Okay.
So the comment that Nancy refers to, I think, leaves us open to add it to a budget if necessary.
Right, it does not require anything.
Right. So if nothing came up between now and the finalization of this budget, this would not be a ballot item. Am I right?
Right.
Am I right?
What it's basically saying is, it's saying that you may consider including in the budget or on the ballot costs for mitigation measures. It's not saying you shall or you must, but every year we should, and we will get a beginning report from the planning director where we're at with this particular plan, and he would then no, well, maybe you should consider in your budget this year these projects, or putting in reserve for these projects that we may have to do in order to make sure that we are protected from hazards. It's not a you shall do this or you shall do that. It's every year you should review your hazard mitigation plan, and you should plan to fund certain things if it's going to impact your ability to withstand a natural disaster, et cetera.
Jim.
Thanks, Dara. And just following up on your ERAF presentation, so what would happen to the town's ERAF rate if the board did not adopt the hazard mitigation plan?
It would go back down to the 7.5%. You have to have all 4 of these actions here. If you miss one of these actions, even if you have the river corridor protections, you're all the way back down to the 7.5%.
So
it's kind of a funky way the state
So if we don't
has it.
adopt this and there's a disaster that causes some damage that needs to be repaired, if we don't do this, it's going to cost the taxpayers a lot more money.
An additional 7.5%.
An additional 12.5.
Oh, I guess I'm
10%.
Right.
Wow, we're all over the place here.
A lot more money.
A lot more money. Yes, Jackie, thank you for maths.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Nancy?
When I raised concerns last year that it appeared our local hazard plan had expired, I was told it didn't matter. Well, if our costs dropped down because of that, actually, didn't that impact us?
So Nancy, that's not a question for Dara. It is a question that for the staff, and it is a question that I answered explicitly back then when you asked it, is we did not identify grant funding until recently to pay for this project. So once we identified the funding and we were able to obtain it, we worked with the BCRC to develop this plan, and that's where we are now.
Anything else from the board?
Do we have a motion on the table?
Yes, we do.
Just
Sarah?
On the table, you should move forward as soon as possible in case there's an emergency.
She makes a good point. Yeah.
Anything from the public? All right. Seeing nothing else, I will call the vote. All those in favor of adopting the Town of Bennington Hazard Mitigation Plan as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I see no abstentions. Thank you very much, Dara. It's passed unanimously.
Thank you, Dara. And Dara thanked the committee, but we didn't do nearly as much as Dara did to get this done, so thank you, Dara.
Thank you, Dara.
And Tom, just so you know, there is a resolution in there for you to sign that says that this was passed, the select board passed it. It's in your folder, so as long as you sign on the dotted line, we're all set to go. So I just wanted to remind you.
All right, next, we'll move on to item 7A. If the reps from the Bennington Rescue Squad would like to come forward. We'll continue our budget discussion from Saturday. Thanks for coming in tonight, Bill.
Thanks for having me.
Do you need my notes?
Hello. Would you like me to start?
Yeah, why don't you kick it off a little bit, and then we had questions that only you could answer on Saturday, so we'll get to those.
I apologize for that. It's been a little busy lately. Bennington Rescue, we just finished our numbers for the previous year, for calendar year 25. We hit an all-time high, record number of calls in our service area in general, but in Bennington, it was 4,364 calls over the last year that we answered. In total, it was over 5,552 calls, including transfers, our other municipalities that we cover, and a small amount of mutual aid. Some other good stuff, our crews got their 8th Mission Lifeline Award. We expect to see a 9th one of those awards. That's for exceptional stroke and heart attack care. We have been enjoying keeping our expenses as low as humanly possible. We're trying to keep our budget as level funded as possible. Unfortunately, we're feeling the effects of everything else that has gone up over the last few years. So just this year alone, we found out that we have a 6% increase in our Medicaid provider tax this year because we have been doing more emergency calls in Vermont versus any other work that goes outside of Vermont that is not taxed. And our liability, inland marine, all of our liability insurance has gone up 9%. So that one just went up just over almost $12,000 to $136 a year, $136,000 a year. We're still reeling from the effects of the first shutdown, hoping there isn't the second one in 2.5 weeks, because that slowed our compensation for a short period of time, of several weeks. Our regional Medicare provider was not providing reimbursement for most outpatient services, including the transport benefit that comes with EMS. And the rest of the good news is we're anticipating about 50% of what would normally be our commercial private insurance to now become self-paid instead, because folks can't afford the marketplace unless they retroactively pass the marketplace subsidies. And there's no more Medicare Advantage if you're trying to enroll in a plan here in Vermont. So those folks that enjoyed the benefits of not having to do their 80-20% split, so 80% Medicare provides, 20% the patient provides, now they're on the hook if they haven't signed up for a Medigap plan, and those are amounts that we now have to try and collect from them. But as of July 1st, it's a great societal good. We can no longer send folks to credit reporting, but that means there's also no stick anymore for paying any amounts that are supposed to be cash paid by the patient. So we've endured those losses as well. So with that, our board had chose to ask for an increase in our funding up $25,000, which is 9% and change. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that got left unanswered on Saturday.
All right, we'll start with you, Clerk.
Start with you. First of all, thanks a lot, Bill, and I appreciate your hard work Saturday, and that's more important you're out on the street than talking to us, so thank you. Thank you for then, and thank you for now. You touched on something that's not just, I'm hearing in my other job at the Veterans Home, bad debt. Do you have an approximate number, how much a year you folks are having to write off in bad debt?
I was able to look up, we have draft financial statements for our fiscal year, which just ended in, on June 30th. That's $205,543 that we had to write off. The year before, it was $275,000, so done a little bit better at collection. Part of that is that there's a new credit loss reporting thing that we have to do with our accountants, and you're not allowed to write off as much of what you think the federal government would owe you anymore as a write-off for bad debt. So that's reduced a little bit over the same past year as well. So about $275,000 a year.
So that's That sounds like you wouldn't be asking us for a lot, if much at all, if folks would just pay their bill. Is that a correct assessment?
Correct. Based on 30 years of experience of trying to collect from folks, especially we serve everybody and anybody that calls. We don't have a lot of recourse to try and get this money back. We still use a collections firm, but there's no incentive if somebody doesn't have the means or doesn't want to pay their bill, unfortunately.
No, I just want the public to be aware.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some snide comments about the services you guys render, and I just want the public to be aware that you guys do more than help their sick grandmother, that you take a big hit to do so. I just want folks to understand that.
Thank you.
Ed, I saw you next.
This is definitely on the heels of what Clark just talked about. Is that bad debt, does it show up in your budget as an expense item, or does it reduce revenue at the end of the year?
Yes, so it does reduce revenue at the end of the year. It does fall into the expense column. We also have an allowance for bad debt. So we add that all together, plus depreciation. That's part of the paper gains or losses that we have on our books every year, because nobody's seeing that as money they're actually going to bring in.
So what we saw in the budget that you...
It's in the expense line. It's about midway down the page. It's a line item that's probably about $660,000, if I remember correctly. Actually, I have it here too.
It's on here for 622. It's part of that number? Under other
That
expense?
is in part in that expenses there. So other expenses, that's where bad debt lives, along with all of our insurance.
And that was 200-ish, you said?
The write-offs are they were 205 for 2025. We always usually budget for an increase of at least 5% in that area every year.
I just want to...
It's just an anomaly that it went down this last year.
Yeah, that was a little bit of luck, I guess. I just want to shout out again to the public, and I think Clark was on this same path that I'm on. This is a necessary service, and we're going to have to fund it. And some of that problem is that the fact that our rescue squad does not get reimbursed when they don't transport. Still the case?
That is the case for all except Medicaid.
Yep.
And some commercial insurers now. But that's still the minority of what we bill out.
Sure.
That's about, combined, it's about 25%, 30% of our payer mix. The most of it is Medicare. They don't pay anything. We do bill folks, but it's for non-transports now, but it's the same as any other bill that we provide. People choose not to pay it. Certain cases for Medicaid that's still not covered. If there wasn't a specific treatment provided under a protocol besides the general protocol for assessment, they usually will not cover that service. So you're correct.
I think it's worth mentioning that I don't think that's going to get any better as time goes on.
No, we're forecasting that this continued somewhere between 6 and 10% increase in emergency call volume is going to go up as folks lose their safety net of having normal insurance to be able to go for preventive visits. They're going to rely on the emergency system and the ERs where they know that they can get care.
Sure.
And not have to worry about the bill eventually. They're still going to get tons of letters from both us and the hospital, but at the end of the day, we're there to provide the service regardless of your ability to pay.
I'll just say this again, I said it on Saturday, it's real easy to go on their website and click on the donate button, and you can set up your credit card to be hit for whatever you think is the right number for you as frequently as you want it to. I think I'm giving $10 a month, and it's well worth it. I wish I could give more. Thank you.
Nancy?
Bill, because I read the email the squad sends out to the select board in September, October, it was the first time I learned that you were considering starting a new program. And I asked that we have you come in so not just the board but the people of Bennington could hear the details.
Absolutely.
But the rest of the board said, no, we'd wait until January. would you be willing to come in later this month or next month to give a presentation? So.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons we're holding off on starting that is mainly funding. It's a heavy time of year for us for bills. It's the beginning of a calendar year. But we really think that there may be an opportunity to reduce the repeat use of the 911 system for those that, one provider in an SUV could go out and provide the care that's needed or connect them with other services and reduce the amount of, they're the same folks that call the police department and use other services heavily, especially on the emergency service side. And I think that would be a great opportunity. And it sounds like we potentially may have some funding for that program as well through the Rural Transformation Act grants that the federal government has awarded to Vermont now. I believe it's $197 million a year for the next 5 years. And it is a higher priority on their list of things that they would like to get established because, we can send someone out in an SUV for like $150. One ambulance trip and a visit to the ER is going to cost somewhere around $1,800. It's a very economical way to try and reduce some of the unnecessary use of our systems right now. Absolutely.
Is funding for that potential project included in this budget?
No.
Okay.
And the other question, and it isn't to the rescue squad, but we did talk last year at the budget meeting about a plan for all the rescue squads in Bennington County to form one big group. And I don't think most people in Bennington or Bennington County have even heard about this. I don't know enough of the details or the costs if I could support it or not right now. And I hope that we can have a discussion here on the agenda. I mean, if the BCRC's had a year to talk to all the squads, there should have been public discussions at every select board across Bennington County, and my concern is the public doesn't know.
And we did discuss that pretty extensively at the last budget session. So could you fill us in on any progress or lack thereof?
So
regionalization?
Progress in terms of collaboration, in terms of consolidation, I don't think without a major effort led from either municipal or like a BCRC level to bring everybody into one room is going to be it's not going to be super effective. I think that we're more likely to start seeing organizations in a lot of trouble financially to the point of maybe where they're considering closing, and that's going to force the issue. I'd really love to see it not get to that point and we stave off of an emergency of emergency services and where we're all kind of forced to try and fill a vacuum versus trying to stabilize the system and get folks to work together in a more collaborative way. If the select board's willing to support it and we get some action behind it with some regional partners, that would be great. As one organization where we're treading water at every level, it's a little difficult to also lead an effort to kind of regionalize the whole county, I must say.
In discussions with your colleagues at the same level as you, are the majority of the other squads in the area kind of in the same boat?
I mean, I'll just go by what was in the paper, but our neighbors to the south at Pownell Rescue asked for double what they received the year previous, which was already pretty much doubled the year before that. So their ask was $300,000 to their select board to cover the 3,000 and change residents in Pownell. So they would have been getting more municipal funding than we get here in Bennington.
Did I see your hand?
You did, but I think that may have helped me understand it.
Okay. Clark?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I guess the question I would pose to the idea who should initiate or guide this regionalization is, should we, as a select board, ask BCRC how they might approach this, or should we defer to you and the other organizations to making that step? Because I know we spoke about it last year, and from what I'm hearing, everyone is still kind of in the same boat as they were last year, and I think it's unfortunate, but to maintain the level of service I think our region needs, I think regionalization is probably going to be the response? We hang together or we hang alone kind of deal.
I would highly recommend that the select board asks BCRC and then it become an invitation for the other organizations to start taking part in it.
Didn't we say that last year when we came out of the work session?
I thought we were deferring to Bill that we didn't want to
that part I
tell
don't
them how to run their shop. But I mean,
actually, I do remember that, and now I think we're hearing from Bill that he would encourage that, so that's good to hear.
Okay.
I think in any effort like this, an outside facilitation is going to be the most effective to get to the thing that's going to be most effective for the most residents of the county, taking some of the local jurisdiction kind of stuff away from, it's still going to be there, but taking that away as something that's a barrier to having a fruitful discussion about it in action.
And the question of regionalization, a lot of times we do tend to think of the county, but is the county the best geography to consider when we're talking about regionalization, when, the North Shire is kind of maybe a little bit more of a self-contained entity, and where we maybe relate more to places just across the border in New York State? I mean, what is our region?
So currently, the region is all of Bennington County plus parts of Windham County is our EMS district that we are part of. How that would make sense necessarily, I think that really needs to be that conversation of everybody that has especially the transport piece of that conversation. The towns of the North Shire put as much, if not more, money into their ambulance services as you do down here in the South Shire. So there are ways that it would at least streamline the costs, but a huge cost savings like we talked about before is probably not realistic. There's too many people that work second jobs and they work for each other. So as soon as you go and you make this one big region, you're now talking about all the stuff that was covered by a per diem or straight wage, you're converting it into overtime. So you need more people then if you really want to contain costs. It's happened time and time again throughout this country. People think they're going to save a ton of money by regionalizing. You reduce the administrative overhead, yes, but you usually increase the amount of things like overtime that you're paying, benefits that you're paying. The larger you get, the more likely you are to have an organized workforce, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's not necessarily a huge cost savings, but it is better for patients. It's better for the system, and it kind of spreads the cost out more equitably amongst all of the municipalities that are involved, depending on how it's structured.
You just touched on something that, in my mind, is a good reason to have a big powwow. Everybody sit down and talk these things out. That per diem kind of overlap stuff, yeah, my son works per diem EMS for a different outfit, so I understand that scenario, but I think to level the playing field, so to speak, to ensure that everyone gets the level of care and service they need, how long can we keep doing what we're doing to maintain what we're able to provide?
No, I totally agree. And there's a lot of variability depending on where you live, depends on the level of care you get right now, whether it's Bennington County or it's the United States. It can vary vastly. When the system is one system, you're more likely to get one stable level of care, and it's the highest level of care that the system can afford to maintain versus, really just crossing over an invisible line and it being a totally different level of care, often lower or higher. It doesn't particularly matter, but at the end of the day, when you have it equalized, it is better. You're absolutely correct.
And I hope folks on the tour, I'm not pointing fingers and saying that suboptimal care is happening.
No, absolutely no.
I've never heard anything like that, but it's like everything, good is good, but we always want better.
Ed? I think I'm hearing that, we said this last year, but it sounds like we really need to do it. I'm hearing that this board ought to begin the process, get with BCRC, we can't even take attendance because we don't know what everybody's level of cooperation might be. So who's your liaison here now?
Jackie.
Jackie, maybe that's something that you would put together a subcommittee of us and some of the folks that are out there to begin this process. I'm very interested in working on that if it comes to that.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be a productive conversation. Like there's quite a bit to learn that we've learned tonight, and then probably more to come. So, yeah, we'll get the ball rolling on that.
Yeah, I was going to suggest maybe having Jackie talk to Bill about things he could present to us on up at future meetings, and then Jim and I can speak with Dan to kind of get a clearer picture of what that would entail on the town level. And then if it looks like a subcommittee is a better idea, then we could probably do that. So
I just think this board has to support the effort to move off this dime this year.
Mm-hmm. No, it sounds like a place where we have to take a leadership role in that conversation. So, since I've got the mic for a minute, I don't have a ton of questions because I have the benefit, obviously, of sitting in your board meetings every month, and I see the discussions that come up every single time you meet, every month, about how to control some of these costs and shore up your financial position and the efforts that you make there, and I'm very, very grateful for that. One question that I did have, we heard last Saturday from Greg that you've made great strides in your bottom line at the end of the year, that you're not making any money, but you are losing less money every year, and so that's great. But my question was, with your funding request this year, the additional $25,000, would that put you to a point where you're at least breaking even, or would you still just be losing less money?
We would still just be losing less money. As I have outlined in the packet here, like our estimate is that we'd still be at a $36,000 operational loss next year.
Which means that the $36,000 has to come from an investment fund?
It has to come either from investment fund, or
fundraising.
Fundraising. We always lowball a little bit the fundraising numbers because we never know what kind of economic year it's going to be for folks, and it's hard to rely on that number. It varies greatly depending on the year. So yes, it still would be a loss.
Nancy, I saw your hand.
Yes.
I was wondering, would the out-of-state squads that come into Bennington County now, would they be part of the regional group? And what I've thought about all year, I cannot imagine getting all the towns to agree that they would pay what the one squad would want to pay. I think that's going to be a really big problem, but until we start hearing details and costs.
Yeah, it's a new revenue and expense model once it becomes some combined entity. So those things can't even be looked at the beginning.
Yeah, would the out-of-state squads coming to Bennington County be part of this group?
So that would really depend. As of January 1st, 2027, Vermont is going to start requiring all organizations that have a primary area to operate in Vermont to have a license. They currently aren't required to do so. So that's kind of another thing that's forcing the regionalization discussion as well, because some organizations that service certain areas of Vermont may no longer do it because they don't want them to have dual licensure. So they definitely are a mutual aid partner. We provide New York much more mutual aid than they give back any day of the week. But our friends at Cambridge, for example, we'd endorse them having a license because we work mutually with them on coverage, whether it's EMS or it's transfers. We work very closely with them, and we'd like to make sure that relationship stays and maybe even continues to grow. And it could be an opportunity. What I'd say probably is that just from a political standpoint, it's easier to work with the same state first and then try to incorporate other states. If it was going to be one big project, I'd say it's probably like a phase 2 kind of thing to start working with the other state organizations.
Because I would think if all the taxpayers in Bennington County are paying in, I think that would be a big question. How would you incorporate out-of-state squads when the out-of-state towns aren't going to be paying in? So, I mean, there's just a lot of questions.
I will say that over the last 10 years, it's down more than 50%. The amount of mutual aid that we do provide out of state into New York now is 127 calls last year, which it was closer to 300 calls a year just a few years ago. But a lot of services across the border in New York have started to go paid. They're paid at the EMT level mostly, but there are a few paramedic services now. So their reliance on mutual aid has gone down, but it's still there.
And is the state ready to start committing money to all the rescue squads in the state?
Stay tuned. So we're in we just finished the first year of a 5-year EMS study plan. So the first year was actually studying the system. Year 2 here, the EMS Advisory Committee, which is the group that reports to the State Department of Health. It's made up of the leaders from each of the EMS districts and a few select representatives like the Vermont Ambulance Association and the Career Fire Chiefs Association, et cetera, just like law enforcement and fire have for their public safety arms as well, that we have to make recommendations now on how to improve the system. So we studied it. We found out what a lot of the flaws are. There are no big surprises there. It costs $92 million to run EMS in Vermont every year, but we only get $58 million in insurance compensation. So there's a huge mismatch there. The fact that we survive on mostly insurance, I think says that we're a pretty darn efficient operation most of the time. So one of the things they are looking at is there a good way to apply a state model to funding, and how do you fund it? Is it towards education? Is it towards operations? Those are things they're looking at, but there's no firm dollar amount set aside yet. There was only dollars set aside for the study, which is how most studies go at the state level. I've learned over the last few decades is they're great at doing the study part, because that only costs a few $100,000. When it comes down to actually fixing the system, that's usually a whole lot more expensive and more labor-oriented, and that doesn't always get to fruition. This is probably the 6th state EMS study I've been through, either here or in my previous state. So there usually isn't tons of change, but fingers crossed this time is the 1 out of 6 that it does.
Yeah, I'm reminded of I used to live in a town up north that I won't mention, but I lived there for about 5 years, and during those 5 years, they paid for 3 different studies of the same intersection.
This is the 2nd study that we've done in 2 years. Oh. They've already paid, this is the 2nd set of consultants that they paid to do a system study, so.
They didn't like the outcome of the first study?
They got what they paid for. It was slightly underfunded, and it was very rushed, and it showed.
And I think sometimes studies are a way to show, make it look like you're doing something and not.
Yeah, we need to avoid that going forward in this case.
Correct. Correct. I would highly recommend that use local expertise, and we have a few people, especially outside of the EMS environment, that are probably going to be great at facilitating some of these conversations. Tap into the local expertise and regional and state expertise that you can get free of charge often.
We like free of charge.
Okay, does anyone in the public have questions for Mr. Kamada? Clerk?
I want to go back to something that we were, at least I seemed confused about on our meeting. There was talk about a line of credit being used to cover some of your operational expenses.
Correct.
And I was thinking back to last year's conversations, we discussed your endowment, which I guess was equivalent to your operational reserve, what level it was at. So when I heard that you were going to a line of credit to get operational funding, I was kind of confused as to what became of that operational reserve / endowment funding. Has that been exhausted?
Yeah. Operational reserve, prudent reserve, whatever you'd like to call it, it just happens to be invested. It's $1.6 million right now. It's gone up because, so we have two things that you would call a line of credit. One's on our investment portfolio. That's how we pay for ambulances. It's like our capital. And then the other is we have a line of credit for normal operational fluctuation from Bank of Bennington. Okay. So the one for Bank of Bennington, it's $150,000 max. We use it whenever, like through the shutdown, when our payments were a lot lower coming in than we had to pay out to make sure everybody got paid for their payroll and kept the insurance and the lights on. So we borrowed from that, and then we pay it back as soon as possible. And that's our policy, is to pay that back as soon as possible. The other one that is part of that investment portfolio is so that we can buy ambulances.
It must be cheaper to borrow from that line of credit than it is to lose the interest income on what's invested. Am I right in that?
Yes. So the line of credit that we have at Bank of Bennington is usually about a half to a whole percentage point lower than what we've been gaining on our investments lately. So
does that help you? Because that helped me.
Yeah, it helps you. But again,
it's like, why would we borrow money out of the investments which are making interest and pay a few $100s worth of interest on, $50,000 that we had to borrow temporarily versus several $1,000s that we would have made in interest on the investment portfolio. That helps, and any of the gains there just continue to pay down what we've borrowed off of our investments, so that we do have the ability the next time it comes to purchase, to pay for our next ambulance that's been ordered, that we have the ability to do so.
I understand exactly what you're saying. It does make sense, but again, going back to last year's discussion of an actual spend down or drawdown of your endowment as part of the funding for your routine operations. So I don't remember off the top of my head, but you talked about where your endowment.
The discussion that we were having is that it used to be that we had, a year and a half's worth of funding in that pot of money. Right now, we have less than half a year.
I remember the discussion of the limited amount of time.
Even though we've increased it because we paid off some of that debt, it's still only about half a year's worth of funding, if not less, that we have. And one good Medicare audit for EMS is a 3 to 6 month pause in your billing.
Sure.
So that will be gone by the end of a Medicare audit, for example.
All right. Well, it's good because in my mind, I was not appreciating that endowment was an investment account, not an operational. And I confused it where I thought last year I was saying that was part of your operational reserve too. But okay, now I understand why you're using the line of credit.
I think it's a lot easier to use the line of credit because we're disciplined to pay it back, where we might be less disciplined to pay ourselves back.
Yes. Okay. It's just like a savings account.
Anything else from the board? I want to thank you for coming in when you weren't expecting to necessarily this evening.
All about unexpected.
I would also like to commend your chair for handling the questions on Saturday when he wasn't expecting to.
You did a great job, trial by fire, let me tell you.
I think altogether, I think we've gotten the answers that we were looking for.
Yep.
And then now we have to move on to the part where we actually talk about how much we're going to allocate, or recommend that the voters allocate, I should say.
Right.
We've gotten figures from town office that show us for various amounts of funding how that would affect the tax rate, which I found to be helpful. So let's start that conversation. Who wants?
I guess for clarity, if I could look at the grid that that Melissa must have prepared for us showing an increase of $25,000 from fiscal '26, $25,000, yep, is $2.40 per 100,000. Melissa, does that make sense?
Right.
So, okay. I think it's important that the public understand that. I think it's important that the public understand that impact. It's pretty minimal for what we will be getting in return if this becomes necessary. That's my opinion. Small investment for something that we absolutely must have.
Right. And I was struck by the almost lack of difference between the 25,000 or dropping it down to 7940. It's 0.1%.
So why would you go down such pennies if they need 25,000 and we already know that leaves them with a $36,000 problem? I just think it's important to point that out.
It's like we're just doing our part to help make up the difference from all the funding that they've lost from the federal government and repayments from Medicaid and all the other things we've heard about here.
And I said this on Saturday, and I'll say it again. We don't have an expense management problem here. We have a revenue problem. And we have the least amount of control over revenue in this organization compared to many others where, people could go out and sell more. People can reduce payroll, and those options are just not feasible in this case.
Worse, reduce services.
And as I mentioned Saturday, it continues to surprise me how much our town is able to do for at the lowest expense possible. Where our cost per citizen in our budget is well under neighboring communities. It was stunning to me.
As I said before, and I'll admit it again, I'm a fan of EMS, and I'm hard pressed to say no, because you folks deal with people's lives, and can't put a price on someone's life.
Anything else from my colleagues? Anyone in the public? Okay. So I'm feeling like I'm hearing from the rest of you that you're inclined to recommend that we allocate the 25,000.
I'm going to recommend that because of the impact being so, the difference in impact being so small between those amounts of money. And I am reminding us all that we still have a $36,000 problem if we went with the 25. So that means that Bill and his staff are going to be working hard to cover that 36. I don't know how they're going to work hard to cover 36 plus 25 more.
And Jackie, I thought I heard you say that you were impressed with how they do watch their money in your experience at their meetings?
Yeah, like I said, it's a topic that comes up at literally every meeting that I've attended with them, and they pay very careful attention to what they're borrowing and paying that back quickly, and a lot of focus on donations I've heard over the past year. And growing their endowment, yes.
So this is the last item, Dan, before you guys can write the warning, correct?
Yeah, so if the consensus appears to be that you are going to approve of the full request from the Bennington Rescue Squad, what I would suggest is the next step is Melissa and I could summarize the changes that you've asked us to make to the original proposal so that you know what those are, and then you could vote to approve the proposed budget with the changes that you've recommended. That would then be on record, and Melissa and I, mostly Melissa, can run the numbers and get that all prepared for the warning. So,
Dan, is that You're looking for a consensus, not a vote?
I would like a vote tonight.
Okay.
And I would like to go over specifically, Melissa can help me to make sure I don't miss anything, the changes that you have directed us to make, so that's on record, and then you folks can vote on that. And if you can vote individually on each change if you want, or we can vote on the change collectively, but we just would like to have a vote on the budget so that we know what you guys are approving, so that we can put that on the warning.
Okay, so the forecast that we have here includes the changes we recommended?
It includes everything but the $25,000 increase to the rescue squad.
And I recall taking those other changes one by one at the last meeting. So
yes.
Really, tonight we just need to vote on the changes on what we recommend be allocated to the squad.
Well, we'd still like to see the impact of all of it.
Because I don't think there was any vote last time. It was just consensus. You folks agreed that there was no significant dissension regarding the decision. So I think it would be best if we took a formal vote on all the changes, either individually or collectively, so that we have a clear direction about where to go.
Those changes are all on the second page of that handout.
Yes, every one of them is there but the firehouse. So essentially, I was just going to run through that if you folks wanted to make a final.
So is Bill off the hook for now?
But wait, Dan, you said but the firehouse,
I think Bill's
there were
off
no
the hook for
changes
now.
to the fire budget?
Thank you, Bill.
Wanted to make sure there weren't any more questions.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Bill.
Sarah has one more
I
comment
just
before
want to
we
make
move.
one more comment regarding the rescue squad. Last time I noted that the library was working with the town, and I would like to see us work collaboratively with the rescue squad. Since this is really not helping them to get ahead, I'd like to see us work with them to kind of get them to break even or get ahead, hopefully, at some point. So that might be something we can look at in the future.
It sounds like that might get folded into conversations we've already committed to having around regionalization.
So Dan, if we were to call a vote, say, on page 2, we're showing a total net changes of 340, 630. We would add 25 to that.
It would be, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the total net change would be 365, 630 if they approved the rescue squad. And that would be sufficient to give us, because as you all know, the voters vote on a budget number. And so if you give us a budget number, that's what we'll make sure we put into the warning.
Okay, so I would look for a motion to the effect of accepting the $365,630 changes to the proposed budget.
Net.
Yes, we do. And Melissa has provided that.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Nancy, what was that?
She wanted to know what the percentage increase was, and I
It's
don't
on the
have
front
the
page.
percentage for the expenditures, but I do have the expenditures for the projected tax rate, and that would be, if you were to grant the full amount, would be the 8.24% as was reflected on this summary, on the first page of the summary. Which is why we wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that.
You know, it sounds like a high percentage because it's approaching 10%. But for those of you that were following along the last 2 Saturday mornings and tonight, there's no fluff in this.
And I think a lot of what's gone into my thinking on this is if we don't take action now, we're passing debt along to our children.
And that endowment is going to shrink.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the easy route for the people that are sitting on this board right now is to simply not fund those things that we should be funding, but it only passes that burden on to the folks that are sitting here next year and the year after. So I appreciate the courage that you folks are showing, but I also understand the pressure that you're under to deal with these costs that are real and will only get worse if we don't deal with them now.
Thanks. And I would point out that of that 360-something, that increase, 320 of that is the increase in the highway paving schedule budget that we talked about for a fair bit the other morning. And yeah, I would just say on that, I'm perhaps less courageous or intelligent than the rest of the board, because I still would favor doing that over 2 years to lessen the impact on this year, even though it might slightly increase the amount next year. And, you know, Melissa had wisely offered the option of maybe, you know, doing 160 into the budget and 160 as a ballot item, which I resoundingly rejected, and then realized maybe I shouldn't have, because that was probably a pretty reasonable thing to suggest. but you know, again, that just so people know, of all the things that we talked about, that's 90% of it is that one item.
Go ahead.
I would.
I think you're good, Bill.
I share Jim's hesitations, and I think probably across this table, this increase. Part of what I see too is that the roughly $700,000 paving budget, $670 this year, whatever it comes out to, is what that was in the budget for paving just a couple of years ago, and it got lowered over time. We found some other sources of money for that, and then took the funds that we were spending there and spent them somewhere else. So really, we're just bringing that department back up to where they should have been all along.
Clark?
Yeah, to flog the horse. Price and cost. I mean, I've not heard anyone say that deferring these expenditures will save us money in the long run. It may save us political heat or face in the shopping grocery store area, but I just don't see where it's going to help the town to not move forward with this. And I realize people don't want to hear more taxes, but unless somebody can come all the way and tell me how we can save money by not making these moves, I'm hard pressed to not support for full money that the experts, you know, RJ felt it was important to get this money, and then I know Melissa has Lincoln's face in her thumb from squeezing pennies so hard. So if she supports it, though, that's significant in my mind. And again, alluding to what Jackie just said, is the money we're spending now is money we should have been spending back down the road, so we wouldn't be in the position we're in today. You know, next year I think we'll be in the same boat if we don't do it.
Can I just ask, I guess
I'd like to...
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm
It's
rambling.
okay. Yeah. I'd just like to note that we've had many long budget sessions, and we haven't received comments from citizens regarding this. So, I mean, we haven't received the inbox ones that we all receive. Maybe some of us individually have. So, yeah, I'm seeing colleagues shake their heads no. So, you know, I'm uncomfortable with paying more, as we all are, but I feel comfortable with decisions because we haven't heard from citizens saying, oh my gosh, this is too much. I want my roads to stay as they are, and, you know, all the other things that go along with that. So,
Which speaks back to Deb's comment this earlier.
yeah, so I mean, I think that speaks volumes to me.
So I missed that highway paving conversation. You must have taken that up after I had to leave on Saturday. And it sounds to me like this was corrected because we were underfunding it, to Jackie's point, the last couple of years. And I will tell you that after studying some road issues in the little village that I live in over there, if we don't maintain our roads on a regular schedule, the cost goes through the roof. So I'm glad you guys had that discussion.
Jim, then Jackie.
Yeah, and I want to agree with what everybody has said, and I think that I don't think anybody disagrees with the notion of where we should be with the amount that we're spending on paving and the mileage of roads that we repave every year. I think the question was, because some things happened, like with the water line replacements, there was a lot of road paving work that was paid for us, so the paving amount went way down. And so that was really nice and saved us some money. But then, the question became during the discussion, do we get back up to where we should be all at once, or do we ramp up? And that was kind of the nature of the discussion. I don't think anybody questioned where we ought to be and that it makes sense to not fall behind. It's just a question of how quick and how big the year-to-year impact was.
I'm all for spreading things to ease the pain if it makes financial sense. So if we held off on a part of that increase for paving in fiscal 27, and we got caught up by fiscal 28, are we still in the realm of today's cost, tomorrow's cost to pave those roads? And I know that nobody here from that department, not that I'd put them on the spot anyway, because that's crazy, but my point about costs going up year over year, something to consider.
I mean, there isn't any question. Well, there is a question. I mean, costs do bounce around sometimes, especially when you're dealing with pavement and things like that. It's pretty unpredictable, but your odds are it's gonna cost more. And so if we should be spending $674,000 this year, next year, if we only spent like $514 next year, then the following year you probably wouldn't just be at 674, you'd probably be at 714. So yeah, there would definitely be, almost definitely be some impact by waiting.
And is that $50,000?
It's just a question of what the trade-off is worth.
Right, and is that $50,000 worth it to ease the burden on taxpayers in the first year of this budget?
Jack, you've been waiting patiently.
I would be careful with tossing numbers around. I tried to do that myself last time we were here, because I think saying it's just an extra $50,000 in fiscal 28 is probably not realistic.
We don't know that.
What I had heard from RJ was actually that it would be significantly more than that.
Wow.
And I just, to be really clear, I don't know that we were underfunding it, as Jim mentioned. We found some sources of funding that made up the difference, but those sources of funding have gone away now.
And those sources of funding had come from taxpayer revenue prior to lead line, ARPA funds. If we had access to those, we may have used, those are windfalls.
Right, exactly. And so for me, I'll just speak for myself, but I hope the rest of the board will take this to heart as well. Just looking through all of this, I think I will approach future decisions around discretionary spending more cautiously, with the understanding that today's discretionary spending becomes tomorrow's operational costs.
Clark?
One thing that sticks to mind, I remember RJ specifically saying that we actually get the more highway we pay, we get a better deal. So although, we're spending more money, but it goes back to, again, my horse, I'm flogging it. We spend the money now and get it over with, as opposed to next year rebuilding the road instead of repaving them. But RJ was quite clear about the more we pave, the better deal they could get on material and everything. So, we're spending more money, but we're spending money and getting more for our bucks.
Some of those things add up to responsible budgeting in my mind. Tom, there's a hand down there.
Nancy.
I just didn't know if I could break into the group here. The biggest budget increase I ever remember going in front of people at Bennington was about 4 years ago. The increase was of just over 8%. And if I remember correctly, it only passed by about 100 votes. I hear the rest of the board saying, well, gee, if we don't do it now, people are going to have to pay later, and I just think there's a real big disconnect. We get a lot of people that are pretty much tapped out financially now, and I know the rest of the board, you're in the financial position, you can afford to take on the increase. I know a lot of people that can't, so at the end of the day, we'll just have to see what the voters say.
I'm not really interested in talking about my personal financial situation, so that, we'll stay away from that.
That's not part of my decision,
Well, but you keep saying, well, if we don't pay now, we'll have to pass it on to people. There's a lot of people that have been struggling for years in this town.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. Yes. There's a collective we. I don't think, my opinion is we weren't talking about we at this table, what we could do. I think we were speaking as representatives of the people of Bennington. And said my concern, as they said the last meeting, is they send us here to make decisions on how the town should operate. And I'm listening to the experts and looking at historical perspective, and I'm hard-pressed to come up with a reason to continue deferring expenditures that we're going to have to make at a later date. And if this raise is difficult this year, and I have no idea what the economy will be with next year, who knows, next year won't even have to be higher, and we'll have to push more of a raise on folks. We just don't know. And as we all know, the federal government, with its new policies on limiting funding and grants and so forth, we're going to have to get used to making the hard, painful decisions. And and I know there are people out there struggling. One time in my life I struggled, like probably everybody at this table has. But in the big picture, I was sent here to try to make this town operate better, and I think continued deferring of required services is not a good idea.
And Nancy, I have some very dear friends that I know are going to struggle under this budget, and I am 100% aware of that, and I'm sorry about that, but I think our job is to look at the bigger picture for the town as a whole, not only right now, but going forward. And that's where I am basing my actions on here today. And they do trouble me, but I think it's our duty to make sure that we maintain our roads, that we maintain the rescue squad, our fire departments, so on. Not only for the people who are living here now, but for the people who are going to be coming on down the line, that we can't ask to pay for these things. Sarah?
To the points that have been raised, last time we discussed making sure that this budget does pass, and what I'm hearing right now is that if this budget is to increase at the point where it may not pass, we had discussed possibly putting on the ballot a separate item for I can't remember now, some point, additional, can somebody help me out with the amount?
320,000, was it? Additional paving?
Yeah, the additional paving, whatever that amount was, so that this budget has the best chance of passing. Curious as to seeing what people's thoughts are on that.
I know what mine are, and I think that's just basically ignoring our responsibility and kicking it down. I mean, we were elected to make hard decisions, and I think that we need to make those decisions and stand by them. If the voters reject the budget, then we'll take it up again, and that's how the process is meant to work. So I feel strongly that if we're going to have the resolve, that we should have the resolve to say, this is what we need to do, this is what we recommend be done. Politics be damned. I mean, it's the way it is, and I don't love it, but I think it's the right call. Jim.
Yeah, not a lot to add to that, Tom. I think that was a good summary, and I would just say that I'm confident that everyone on this board really, really struggles with the those two competing things, a really strong desire to keep property taxes down as much as possible, along with the absolute responsibility to maintain that efficient government operations are maintained. It's really hard, and I mean, I'm probably as much of a fiscal conservative as in my own history of running organizations as anybody would ever want to run into, and it's painful for me to go through this process. It really is, and I do respect the board being willing to do what they really think is right for the long-term benefit of the town and taking a stand on it. If, the big concern is, a lot of people will evaluate this spending plan based on a percentage increase in the budget and probably not a lot else. And if it doesn't pass, then we're going to have to try to figure out what to do and why it didn't pass and where we can change. But, I think we give it our very best shot, recognizing that, like I said, everybody here is doing their level best to balance competing objectives.
I think our job is to recommend the most responsible budget that we can, not the budget that has the best chance of being passed. I don't think that's something we need to measure at this point in time. Jackie?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think putting half in our budget, putting 160 in our budget and putting the other 160 as a separate ballot item on the ballot risks really confusing voters when they go. And so I actually feel more comfortable putting the full 320 in our budget. And if the voters come back and say, that's too much, we can't stomach that, then it seems clear to me that the move is to maybe go half this year, right, and see if that's palatable. But this is not a budget that comes from frivolous spending, right? The drivers of the increases here are just inflation and labor contracts and insurance costs and overdue capital expenses, right? And that doesn't erase the fact that the economy is hard for a lot of people and spending is tight and it's a really difficult situation all around. But that doesn't mean that this budget is wrong.
I'll go Nancy, then Ed. Thank you.
I'm interested to understand why it was decided this year that we would not be voting on each of the nonprofits after we heard from them and had a discussion. We voted last year. I think the boards have always voted in the past.
I don't remember a single time when we did that.
I don't either.
We hear from them on town meeting day, and then it goes to the voters.
The ones in the budget, the ones that came and talked to us.
Our job is to recommend.
I'm not sure I understand
budget.
your question.
Our job is to recommend the total budget.
Nancy, are you asking that this board vote individually on each increase for the agencies?
Well, in the groups that come before us that are in the budget.
Yes.
After they speak and we ask questions and we talk one way or the other, the board normally votes yes or no on each of the groups.
And you could still do that, but there's nothing wrong with taking them collectively.
Well, no, I just wondered why the decision was made this year, because I think in past years the board has always voted.
Well, I mean, if I could, I mean, after all the presentations were done, we had a very lengthy discussion about each one of those and reached a consensus across the board. I mean, maybe we didn't take a formal vote on everyone, but I think we certainly discussed and reached consensus on every one of those that presented to us.
Well, but that's how the board does it every year, but they normally vote on each one at the end.
We have not voted on each individual agency in my experience on this board.
In the budget.
That's correct. We have voted on a budget a total budget that we recommend to the taxpayers.
And I would say, too, that we've spent more time in budget meetings this year discussing these very things than I ever remember us spending. I don't remember a budget meeting since I've been on this board where we didn't finish an agenda. That happened at the first meeting.
I mean, every one of those organizations that came to us with a request for a certain amount of money or a certain increase, and every one of them, we went up and down this table and talked about it and determined if there was a consensus for going forward with it. I don't know what we didn't do that you're suggesting that we didn't do.
No, if I may, please. I think, and again, I haven't been around as long as anyone on this board here, but in years past, I thought there were times where some of these social groups came here and presented to us an overall view of what they had done in the community and what they projected to do in the coming year. I don't recall a specific vote, up or down vote, on the board itself, but I do recall seeing some of these groups come before the board and the public and present their operations. And, I was kind of surprised we didn't see or hear more from some of those groups this year. I kind of expected some of them to come by, but especially in the context of the federal cutbacks and all. So I was surprised.
Which I'm sure we'll hear about, Clark, because we only speak to the groups, the libraries, North Bennington's fund and the rescue squad that are actually included inside the budget.
Right. No,
the other agencies will speak at town meeting.
Well, I thought there's other times where they had appeared even before town meeting. No. Maybe I'm confusing different presentations, but I seem to be at one time or another, I seem to hear a lot from a lot of the groups in the county that provide services to our folks here. So.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Go ahead, Ed.
Tom, I think this is for you. I'm listening to what Nancy's saying, and I'm wondering what the recourse is for a board member any one of us, who may have had an issue with an individual line item that we're not voting on individually. Does Nancy or anybody else have any other recourse on that?
Well, I think we did discuss it.
We discussed, but we, for whatever reason, determined that we were going to vote to recommend a total budget, not individual line items, which I understand why.
Right.
But Nancy seems to have an issue with something, and I'm wondering what her recourse is.
I just wanted to understand why last year and past years, it was the same this year as the past year. We listened to the groups, questions and answers we discussed. But
we did not vote on individual agencies and organizations in the 3 years that I've been on this board.
Well, I look back at the meeting today from last year, we voted.
Okay. So I'm trying to find a pathway for Nancy, and maybe she doesn't need one, because I'm not sure.
I mean, we did ask repeatedly for specific cuts.
I'll point out the first group that came before us, I explained why I wouldn't be able to support their increase. I wouldn't be able to vote for it. Well, the board didn't tell me ahead of time, well, we weren't going to be voting this year. It just would have been nice to be in on the loop that we were going to, change what we normally did at the end. And I don't know if people are going to look at the minutes and say, well, who voted yes, who voted no. They can read the discussion and the consensus, but.
Sorry?
If it would make you more comfortable, I mean, rather than spend another 45 minutes going over this, we can take over these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items.
Wouldn't take any time at all.
Well, we're 45 minutes almost over now. I was just curious why the decision was made.
I have no issue. If someone would like to make a motion regarding the pay increases to staff, the library, both libraries, the fund for North Bennington, which was level.
Can I just, if we don't do that and we stick to what I thought was the original marching orders, the recourse would be that someone votes no to that budget, and they'll have the opportunity to speak to any individual line items that they had that caused them to vote no.
Right.
That's the recourse, am I right?
You are, and everyone did have opportunities to speak to every individual line item in the past almost 11 hours.
Maybe I was dreaming, but it seemed like I remember the chair asking the board for a position on every single one of those organizations that came in and presented to us. And I remember that Nancy objected to the Bennington Free Library and explained why specifically. But I remember, the positive consensus expressed on all of the others except I think one. For the requested amount. I mean, it was, and I think we went over it and checked and said, is everybody okay with that?
So we were looking for consensus, not a vote.
We did that with every single one of them.
We did.
And it was clear as a bell to me.
Me too.
That's my recollection.
As we recall, our thing is system with Lake Perrin, the group from Lake Perrin, I remember they came and presented their request, and of course we had a really unpleasant exchange. And I think the consensus was no, we couldn't support their request. And, I assume it was withdrawn. But again, for some reason, and again, I can't pin down specifics, but I could have sworn there were other times where other groups had come in and presented themselves. We didn't have a vote per se on those groups, but I do remember those groups presenting to the board and the community. And, town meeting night, I can't say I remember each of those individual groups presenting. I'm sure they did, but I'm not going to say yay or nay either way, but I do recall at one point hearing from each of these social service groups, because I even signed a few of the petitions to get them on this list.
So, Tom, what did you recommend that we do just now?
I was asking for a motion to approve the total net changes.
So
we did, I believe, vote on salary increases.
Yeah, we did vote.
Yep. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion, if you'll accept it for now, that we alter the budget to include the schedule that we have in front of us to the tune of $365,630, capturing the full $25,000 increase that the rescue squad is looking for.
I will second that.
With discussion?
Okay. Discussion.
The one question I have, and I can't remember your name, ma'am, but I see you pacing. Did you have something you wanted to add to the situation? Okay, because I wanted to make sure that you didn't feel...
I haven't even gotten to public yet.
Oh, I wanted to make sure, because it seems like we were moving down the pathway to vote on this.
Well, now we have a motion on the floor that we can actually discuss formally.
Okay.
Yep. We've heard Nancy's objections, and I didn't hear...
I didn't object. I was just looking for clarification.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate your clarification of your...
Okay.
Any other discussion on the board on the motion? Okay, any from the public? Deb?
Deb Matt, Bennington. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but I remember line items on the ballot. And I can't tell you what the number was, but I remember Stuart said, I'll just pick a number out of the blue, that the budget's going to go up 4%. So after the voting, because everybody voted for all the extras, it ended up going like 5.2%. So they were crabbing at Stuart because he lied. And he explained to them, no, the budget went up, like I said, but the voters voted for the extra line items, which drew it up. And I think that's what Nancy's trying to, I remember that because they were all over Stuart for it because he lied.
You are absolutely correct. The items where the social service agencies must petition to be included on town meeting day are separate and over and above the additional budget. Those items do get added by the voters.
So if you tell us the budget's going to go up 5.5%, and there's 6 line items, and the people don't realize, and they vote for them, it's going to be higher.
You're correct.
That's why I say the voters got to get involved and understand what they're voting for. I'm sorry.
I agree.
No apologies needed.
So Melissa, I just want to clarify
hope they do.
that this budget includes all the agencies at their previously voted amount, correct? But if a new agency or agencies come in before the deadline, which I believe is only in a couple days, then those would be added to the budget, be added to the ballot, and they could increase the budget even further. I would say it's unlikely at this point that we will experience that, but Deb, you're absolutely right. If somebody comes in with a couple of petitions for additional funding and we haven't accounted for it because it wasn't on the ballot last year and wasn't approved last year, then it would increase the budget amount and obviously the tax rate. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's not going to happen this year, but there are still a few days left for a social service agency to submit a petition and be placed on the ballot by statute.
And Dan, the social service agencies that are already slated to appear on the ballot, are they all level funded, or are there increases that any of them have requested?
They're all level funded, because if they do an increase, they have to petition, and they have not.
Okay.
Yeah. And they've all submitted, as you know, their information, their financial information, so that they can continue to be on the ballot at the same amount as they were last year. But if a new agency comes in, that would throw a wrench in our projections, obviously. We just don't have any control over that.
Thanks for that clarification, Dan.
So we're working on a budget that may change because of a late comer.
Very unlikely, but possible, yes. Right. We have not passed the deadline for when petitions can be submitted.
And if that happens, and we're going to hope it doesn't, but if that happens, how is this board and the public notified of that?
It's placed on the ballot.
So that's the next time.
Yeah, we would obviously tell you.
Right.
You would approve the warning at the next meeting.
Yep.
And that would include on that warning that new ballot item, and we could discuss it at that point.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that this is all a academic discussion and then we don't have to worry about it. But
I'm just trying to make sure that.
Yeah. No, we should.
I want to make sure taxpayers have a pathway to talk to us.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Although we don't have the ability to remove that ballot item once it's placed on the ballot, because by statute, if they petition and those signatures are verified, it automatically goes on the ballot regardless of the select board's.
Got it.
And I'd say typically, if people are looking to do that, they come to either one of us or to the manager for clarification on how to do it. And I have not had that experience this year. I don't know if anyone else has.
And I imagine those things will come up when this board is asked to approve the warning.
Yes. Yep. Hopefully it doesn't come up.
Hopefully not.
But if it happens, you will be fully aware of it, and so will the taxpayers.
Anything further before we vote on the motion? All right, seeing none. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nope.
And abstentions? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. This budget was a difficult one for a lot of us, and I think we did our job.
I'm just going to ask the public to stay with us through the rest of this till we get to the election. If there's questions, ask them. And this board, I think, needs to educate itself on the detail of that 365. Yeah, so that we can speak to it.
All right. Energizer Skybridge license, Mr. Monks. I love
the so-called
Skybridge.
That was the attorney's, not our attorneys, but the Energizer attorney's language. So we went with it. Hopefully this is a pretty easy one, since that Skybridge, so-called, has been in place for decades. When the Energizer went to sell this building to the new purchaser, which is hopefully happening very soon, it became evident that there was at least no one could find any documentation regarding the so-called Skybridge. So they have developed, and our attorney has reviewed and approved a so-called Skybridge license, whereby the town would give them the authority to continue to use that Skybridge so long as they maintained it in good condition and indemnified us for any damages caused by any occurrences from either damage to the right-of-way from the Skybridge, or damage or injury to folks because of this Skybridge. So we're actually in a better position after signing this agreement than we are right now, because there's an explicit indemnity that protects the town, whereas right now, it's, as far as we know, there's no documentation whatsoever. So I did discuss this extensively with our counsel, Meryl Bent. She fully approves it and feels comfortable with it and thinks it's an improvement over our current situation. So it just clearly sets forth the rights for everybody going forward, whereas now we're we don't have any written documentation on it.
And for those watching at home who are wondering, or perhaps out there, we're talking about that covered walkway that goes over Scott Street between the two Energizer buildings.
Between Plant 1 and Plant 2 of the Energizer property. I should have started with that. Nancy, do you know, you lived in that neighborhood. How long has the Skybridge been there?
Oh, God, it's got to be at least 30 years.
Yeah.
When I saw 15, I said, no, a lot longer than that.
No, they said more than, they said 15, but it's definitely been there since, at least 27 years since I've been paying attention to it.
On my outing this afternoon, toward the end of it, I ran under that, and at no point did I feel like I was in danger of falling on me. And actually, I did. It looks pretty good. Like I said, it's well maintained.
Jackie?
Thanks. The one question I had about this, it says the structure extends into and over the town's right-of-way.
Yes, it does.
So is Scott Street owned by Energizer and we have a right-of-way, or?
No, it's the town's right-of-way. Yep.
So it's town property?
Town property, yes. So they oftentimes roadways are referred to as rights-of-way.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just a common term for roadway right-of-way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it can be a little confusing because does Energizer own it and we have a right-of-way? And to be frank, there's two ways to own roads. We can either own them in fee, or which is all the rights, and it's not just a right-of-way, we own it as a strip of land, or we have so-called right-of-way over somebody else's land, but it's the same outcome. We have full rights to use the property for transportation purposes, et cetera.
Okay.
Nancy?
It says Energizer is going to pay to maintain this for 49 years?
Or their successor, yeah.
Oh, so this will get passed on to whoever owns the property?
This will be recorded in the land records, and it will become a
And when I look
requirement.
on page 3, when it says to the grantor, which is the town of Bennington, it doesn't say who to address it to with a copy to. Who would the lawyer be?
It will be a Merrill, and we'll fill it in. We'll fill in all that before I sign it. But tonight is just just asking you to authorize that you authorize the town manager to sign it, and we'll fill in those blanks, obviously.
And nobody could find a record, huh, of them putting that in?
No, I looked really, really hard, and so did they. But neither party had any record of it. I've got to imagine that there was some sort of agreement, perhaps not written, but I couldn't find anything, and neither could they. And
I think it must be 30 years.
Yeah. This is where Stuart's knowledge would probably have come in handy. Yeah. We can't ask him.
Anyone else on the board?
Does the town have any liability as it relates to that Skybridge? Somebody jumps off.
No, well, the answer is most likely no, even under the current circumstances, but definitely no once we sign this agreement.
So this protects us?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is very protective of the town.
Anything further from the board? Anyone in the public have opinions on the Skybridge? I'm sorry, Sarah.
Oh, that's okay.
Did you have something?
Make a motion for purposes of discussion?
Sure.
I'll make a motion to request that we authorize the town manager to execute the license and indemnity agreement between Town of Bennington and Energizer.
Second.
All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstentions?
Okay, thank you very much, and we'll get that taken care of. And we do hope that that will transfer hands pretty soon, because we know that the new buyer has big plans for that project, for that property. The next item on the agenda really is just getting a clear direction from the Select Board on the sand filter replacement project. There really are, I think there's only two real options, although a third one is identified, and it is an option. I just don't think it's a feasible one or a responsible one. But I think the two responsible options would be to schedule a bond vote in March to move forward with the sand filter replacement project, or in the alternative, vote to move forward with the final design of the project and hold the bond vote in November of 2027. I think either one of those are responsible. I do note, and I know there's been some concern with staff, although other staff disagree, that a March vote may be perhaps rushing it a bit, but RJ and Larry would very much like to get underway. So I do think both options are viable. I do not think that the option to strictly hold until November without going forward to final design is appropriate, given that we have a state mandate to replace this filter and deal with the new phosphorus requirements. So I would ask direction from the board regarding the two, I hope, acceptable options, and we will move forward with whatever you direct us to do.
Start on the end this time. Ed.
So, Dan, I heard you talking about these options, but I didn't really hear you telling us which one the staff recommends. I heard that we'd like to get it going. I'd like to hear what the experts are suggesting.
So I have a split decision, and I'm not going to say which one's which, although you could guess. Some of my staff would like to move forward in March, and others are comfortable with moving forward with the November bond vote, provided that we move forward with final design now, starting now.
So that you stay on schedule for an a spring of 27 construction period.
It would begin in fall of 2027 if we postponed.
Clark.
My question goes along with my standard request. Which vote do you think would give us the greatest number of our electorate involved in a decision?
By far the November, I think, just because it's a national election. But I could be wrong. The clerk's not here to guess, but I'm thinking, given the 2026 midterm election, I think it's shaping up to be a high level of interest. It's probably going to be more voters than you'd see on town meeting day.
I could see we need to go forward with a final design so that folks would know what we're looking at putting in place. Because if we rush it now, I think we get fewer people involved. I was my big concern. I think the more of our voters are involved in the process, the better it is for the process.
We definitely will have more concrete information for a November vote than a March vote, but our consultant does feel pretty comfortable about the dollar figure, but as far as the actual specific design, we will have much more information for a November vote, for sure. Yeah.
Jim?
I think with the last two comments, everything I said has been said, but I'll summarize. So it seems like, the more people we can get involved, the better, and that's likely going to happen in November. At the same time, this is a project that we absolutely, it needs to go forward, and if we move forward on the final design now, it is moving forward, and when we get to a bond vote in November, we have a lot more certainty about the amount of the project cost.
Fair point.
Nancy?
It was 4.4. It says with the engineering, that brings it to 4.95?
Engineering and permitting, et cetera, all those costs, all in our engineer predicts.
I think I heard somebody did say what the cost would be for the increase for the water and sewer users. Was that it for the 4.4 million?
So we happen to have that information.
For the 4.
When I say we, Melissa prepared this just because I thought you might ask. So the worst case scenario would be that we would have to bond, we would have to pay for, we still have to bond for the full amount, but actually how much we have to pay back will depend upon how many grants we get, how much relief we get from different programs. So let's just say the worst case scenario, if we don't even get what we expect to get for our grants, et cetera, would be a funding a full $4.95 million. That would be a total annual increase for a typical flat rate homeowner, according to Melissa, of $59.10. That would be the increase that they would have to pay just to pay for that 4.95. Now, I will have to say, our engineer, and based on my research as well, and Larry's and RJ's, feels very confident that we will very, very likely qualify for a 20% grant on the construction costs. So that's about an $880,000 deduction on that 4.95 million. So we're going to have somewhat of a lower amount, very likely. We also may qualify for some additional, like 1 to 1.2 million. So the best case scenario would be that we would have to pay back a $2.95 million bond, and that would be a $35.07 impact on the typical flat rate homeowner. So we can't really predict. We know what the worst case scenario is, we know what the best case scenario, but we don't know actually where it's going to land, although we feel pretty confident that we'll at least land somewhere at or below the 4.2 million that we'll have to pay back. The state will require us nonetheless, and I know that Larry was able to talk about this last time, regardless of how many grants we qualify for, we still have to bond for the full amount, and then we would get the grants to help us pay for it. So that's where we're at.
And when it comes to who's going to pay this?
Yes.
I know that North Bennington has its own water.
So these would be sewer rate, these would be only
So
be the sewer
everybody would have to
ratepayers.
pay?
Yep. Well, everybody who has sewer service would have to pay as a ratepayer. This is not a taxpayer fee or increase. This is a increase in the rates for the flat rate for the sewer.
So people that still have septic systems and so forth?
Septic systems won't pay for it. No, if you're on a septic system, you will not pay for it.
But people in North Bennington who pay for North Bennington water, do they still all pay?
You bet we do.
For sewer in Bennington?
So he was, Jim. So there are a portion of users in North Bennington that are on town sewer, so they would be subject to this. But it's only someone who has access to the town wastewater system, who uses the town wastewater system, that would be subject to paying for this bond. Even though, it's very interesting, all of the voters get to vote for it. Only those people who actually use the surface will pay for it. And that's because all bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the town of Bennington. And only the voters of the town of Bennington can bond, regardless of whether it's for an enterprise fund or not.
But this will be something we'll have to look at in the future. And I remember other people have brought this up. People that aren't going to share in the cost shouldn't be voting on the bond.
That's state statute. We don't get to decide that.
Well, that's water and sewer. I mean, the other things are different, but...
Anytime we bond, we have to get the entire populace to vote for it. And then all voters of Bennington to vote for it.
Yeah, but that was decided about 70 years ago. I don't think anybody could have expected the cost of everything today.
You'll have to take that up with the legislators, because they'd have to change the law. Yeah.
Is this a good time to just remind people that this project has to be done?
I agree with that 100%.
I mean, somehow we got to find our way through this to get it done.
Yep. I mean, I myself would be more comfortable voting for a bond after I've seen the final plan, but the final design.
I don't disagree with that.
Are there costs that will incur moving forward with the final design before if we choose to wait on the bond vote?
So we won't incur any additional costs on the design portion, whether or not we bond in March or November. There are forgivable loans up to, I think it's $100,000, if I remember correctly. We expect it to cost less than 200,000, so we will be expending some funds, but we'll have to expend those regardless of whether we do that for a March bond vote, whether we do a March bond vote or a November bond vote. So there will not be any additional costs with regard to the design.
So it's the same cost either way?
Well, the same cost either way for design. Now, that being said, we don't have a crystal ball. We would hope that costs don't increase significantly, but we're talking about, a 4 or 5 month difference between when we would actually be constructing the project. So there's not a huge risk that prices will go up significantly, but there's a modest risk that if you don't vote in March, then you might see some modest increase in construction costs. That being said, if you lose a vote in March, then you're probably not going to be going to final design or doing anything until you go to November, so you get set back significantly. So,
and the town has the capacity to cover those expenses before a bond passes?
Absolutely, we would have to anyways, regardless, because the state's requiring us to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you remind me how many presentations have happened about the sand filter replacement? I know I've done some tours. I just can't remember how many.
At least 3, I think. Okay. And the last one was very recently. But they do get spaced out, so sometimes it's easy to forget. Even I have to go back in the minutes and say, when was the last time we had that? But we had a pretty comprehensive one just recently. I think it was in November, from the engineer. Yes. So
have we had anything in the paper recently?
I don't remember if they reported on that particular item or not. But obviously, another reason, if you wanted to take a little more time, we'd have a chance to put out more information to the public. But it has been obviously discussed quite a bit already. But you can always, even just. Larry's, I think, this is not mine, this is Larry's, I think, excellent summary of the project is helpful, and we'd be looking to do some more of this as we move forward, regardless of when we move forward.
Tom, is this a good time to remind us that the Public Works, or the Water and Sewer Department alerted us that the costs for this thing the discharge permit is costing us because of this. We pay more for our discharge permit. Do I remember this?
No. Well, what you're recalling is that if we do not do this in a timely fashion, then we will face very significant fines from failing to comply. And we'll still have to do it eventually anyways. So they're not just going to say, just keep paying the fines, because the fines will be so painful that it would not make sense to continue to pay those.
So there is a pain point to kick this down the road any further.
If we went past November, I'd be very nervous about approaching the state and trying to get an extension, because they would say you had 2 chances to vote, and you didn't. And so now we're not going to expend it. We won't extend it. So
thank you.
Sarah?
What is your feeling?
I have mixed feelings, but I've said to, talked to Tom and Jim about this. I think given this very challenging budget, I think we have our work cut out for us to explain to the voters the budget we have, and to add on to that, explaining a bond. I would be nervous about that. That's me being perhaps a little chicken. Okay. Admittedly, but I think I personally would prefer more time to focus on the budget you guys just approved than to try to focus on that and a bond vote. Not that we couldn't do it. I know most of the work would be done by the DPW staff, and they would do an awesome job, but it's a lot for the voters to take in, I think.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to either effect?
Motion to accept our recommendation that we go forward with full engineering planning with the idea of putting a vote on in the November ballot.
I'll second that and note that we should have some educational pieces out, but hopefully in the beginning of the meeting and not maybe at 8 or 9 o'clock.
Any discussion on the motion?
I didn't hear the end of it. Did you say for November?
Yes.
Yes. Anything from the public?
Our public. Who's our public?
Deb, for the people at home, Deb is still here.
Yeah.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Dan?
much. And just a reminder, we'll be looking at water and sewer budgets in June, so lots of time to discuss all of these things as part of that as well. I do not have any action items on the manager's report tonight, so we could move into upcoming agenda unless anybody has any questions.
Upcoming, anybody have any questions for the manager? Okay. Upcoming agendas, I have hopefully something on vacant properties coming up. I know our economic development subcommittee is working on a proposed or
We
a
hope to be ready
presentation.
by January if there's room on the agenda.
Okay.
Second meeting, excuse me.
We have had continued discussions with the PD on the animal control ordinance. I don't think we're quite there yet. Dan, do you have anything else?
Only, and I know you're still, I just wanted to start the board thinking about this. The opioid settlement money that we've received, we have also received a request from Turning Point to expend some of those, to grant them some of those funds. And at some point, I don't know if we'll be ready in January, but at some point in the next few weeks at least, the board will have to consider that request. And I'm sure the Turning Point will attend and explain their proposed use for some of those funds.
Oh, the budget warning, we got to do that.
Yes. The budget warning will happen at the next meeting, guaranteed. So yes, that will also be on the agenda. So yes, absolutely. So it's kind of what we've been kind of navigating ourselves through. There's a very extensive and specific list of what those funds can be used for under the settlement agreements. We have shared those with Turning Point, and I have also asked our council to review Turning Point's proposal to ensure that it complies with the settlement agreement's requirements, and we have received a positive determination from our attorney that their request does comply with the requirements of the settlement agreement. That doesn't mean that they should or shouldn't be funded, but we know that it could be funded if you folks wanted to fund all or a portion of their request. And I can also, obviously, before you guys make a decision, I'll be reviewing how much money we received to date, how much money we will receive. We've received a significant amount, not a huge amount, and we will continue to receive a small amount annually for the next 10 to 12 years. Is that right, Melissa? And so we can certainly, it took me a while to grab my head around it, and I'll certainly make sure that we try to clearly present to you what amount of money is available. After this kind of amount of money that we received recently, it really just kind of, I hate to say dribbles in, but it's not a lot. It's not going to sustain an organization or anything like that. So no other groups have approached us. It's certainly the select board, if they feel that they would like to request proposals more broadly. I will say that, if it's not a medical provider or Turning Point type group, it's pretty restricted for what they can do. I mean, I could see possibly UCS using the funds, although they have not approached us. I don't know if the hospital has any way to it's...
Maybe ACT.
What about the rescue squad?
I don't know, I don't know what kind of drug treatment type or prevention programs they have, but certainly.
So bike paths help people stay healthy, right? This is about health.
It's very targeted to, obviously, opioid treatment and prevention, and it's not a lot of money. Which I could understand why maybe the hospital and UCS are not interested in pursuing it, because it's just not a lot of money. It is something, and it could be helpful, but it's not going to sustain an organization for more than a couple years, and then it won't be a significant amount of money. But all of that, you'll have information before you make your decision or proceed. But that's a future agenda item for sure. I don't know when that will be. There's no deadline, no imminent deadline for when we disperse those funds. The only other thing that I have, upcoming agenda, and this would not be till February. I won't discuss it too much because we'll have a presentation on it, but under the new Act 250 changes, there's some elections that the town has to make to ensure that we get exemptions from Act 250 jurisdiction. BCRC has a presentation, and we'll present an option to you folks that the Planning Commission has already endorsed, and we hope that you folks will, but more to come on that, and that won't be till February. That's all I got on my list, Tom. I'm sure there's more.
All right. Other business. Nancy?
Yep. I have information I want everyone in Bennington to hear, and I'd appreciate not being interrupted or hear point of order. This board held a regular meeting back on December 8th. I wasn't there and Sarah wasn't there. And as I watched the replay a few nights later, I watched the Bennington Select Board do something I've never watched the board do in the past. The board made it clear they're going to totally ignore the fact that our voters back in March voted by a 2-to-1, about that they did not want the charter change that would let 16 and 17-year-olds in Bennington vote on town ballots, be on the select board, and be appointed to town boards and committees. As I watched the meeting, I learned the town had gone out in June, got a $5,000 grant to start the Town of Bennington Youth Council. Well, this will be a new board in Bennington for youth. And then I learned it would not be 16 and 17-year-olds in Bennington being appointed. Kids as young as 13 years old can be appointed wherever in Bennington County they live, where the SVSU is. Now, I kept waiting for somebody on the board to say, our voters voted no, this can't go forward. Tom, you said that you and Jim had been talking to the group, I guess it was ACT, about this earlier. We all should have known. Clearly, I was kept out of the loop because I was against this charter amendment from day one. I don't even know if this is legal in Vermont. A select board puts something on a ballot, the voters say no, and the board is going against their voters. I don't know what message this sends to the voters and taxpayers in Bennington. I don't know what message this sends to the youth. So this really needs to be on the agenda before a town meeting. If this board doesn't address it and make it right, this by itself is reason enough for people to defeat the budget.
Okay, I'll address that because most of what you just said is patently not true. We have formed no new town committee. They are not an official town committee. We have asked the youth to discuss things amongst themselves and then come back and tell us about those things, but that does not make that a town committee. They are a committee that is going to be formed under the auspices of the Alliance for Community Transformation and will remain so. And so, no, Nancy, we have not formed an official town committee. We have not granted voting rights to the youth of Bennington, but what we have done is recognize that the youth of Bennington should have a voice in their futures. And unless we hear from them what is important to them, we cannot possibly make decisions going forward that are going to affect those young people in the future. We say we want the kids to stay here in town, or at least come back home after they've finished their educations and maybe spent some time elsewhere. This, in my view, is a step in that direction. We have absolutely not formed a new town committee.
And if I could add to that, since I was involved in those discussions too, I would have to say that it kind of begins and ends, Nancy, with the fact that the ballot item that you referenced has absolutely no relationship whatsoever to that committee that was formed. And if you wanted to find out about that, instead of bringing it up to grandstand at a meeting, you should have asked us about it, or asked Dan about it, or asked somebody about it before.
Thank you, Jim.
Well,
Thank you.
the voters were asked, do you want 16 and 17-year-olds in Bennington being appointed to town boards
It
and
has
committees?
absolutely
We have
nothing
not appointed
to do
anyone to a
with
town
that committee that was formed, Nancy. And
Well,
you could
this-
have learned that
this
if
is-
you had asked us about it.
Well, I should have been told about it while you and Tom were working with the group. This doesn't even have to be kids in Bennington. 13-year-old kids from Bennington County talking about
Motion
what
to
they-
adjourn.
Second.
I have one item of new business.
We do have
or other business.
But
or
Nancy,
something.
I'm sorry, and I'm happy to discuss this further with you, but you are completely incorrect.
I'm 100% correct.
You know what?
Then
I
when
know
they
you
show up
believe
at the
that.
ballot in March, then I will eat my words, but you are wrong about this.
The public was asked, do you
Point of
want
order.
16 and 17-year-olds being appointed to town boards and committees?
It was whether or not they could vote, Nancy, and none of these folks are not being granted the right.
It was not just voting.
It was voting.
And
Specifically on voting.
We don't need approval from the voters to make a committee for youth. We need approval to allow them to vote, and that's not what this committee does.
so we're elected to work for the people of Bennington, but kids from across Bennington County can have input into our spending in Bennington.
And you can take that with as many grains of salt as you wish, but I think we are better served to hear from kids who are in Bennington a lot and who may want to move back to the area someday about things that are going to affect their futures. And it is and nothing that this committee could represent would be in any way binding or would be in any way not up for discussion by the select board. So I think you are deliberately making a mountain out of a molehill.
Nancy,
And,
you need to get yourself informed before you start putting on a show at these
But the
meetings.
person
Don't make
who-
accusations, Nancy.
But I watched the meeting a second time before I came here. The person in charge of the youth group said the first year will be a pilot project, and maybe next year other towns will want to do this. Well, other towns were never asked to vote.
I don't care what happens in other towns at 9:30 at night. Can we move on?
Let's move on.
I have one item of new business, if I could cover it, and then I'm going
Any
home.
other business? Clark?
I do not.
Oh, I'm
And me-
sorry,
and me
Sarah
too.
does. Sarah does.
This is for comment only, and I do not wish to have any discussion on it for my colleagues here, because it is similar to what Nancy noted, and I came prepared to note it, so no discussion, please. I'm reporting out for the Energy Committee since I'm a liaison to the Energy Committee. They wanted to let me know that they would like to have younger voices at the table.
Yay!
That's all.
Again, long before what just happened came about, as you know, we started off the meeting hearing about young man getting the award. And what I wanted to point out, and I keep running into young people in town doing good things, and we just don't seem to hear enough about young people doing. We hear about various behaviors in town. So I want to let people out there know that I've been noticing a lot of good things in town trying to do what's right. And I appreciate them, the parents, and look forward to seeing the number one thing we hear about the young people in town is not that. That was generally, I've written down this long before that last meeting came about. We don't hear enough about the good things people in town do. I want to make that clear that a lot of good things are happening.
Ed?
This is a tough one, but I feel very compelled to mention it. I read, and then we heard at the beginning of the meeting during public comment, Ken Millman made the announcement that Kelly Carroll is being awarded the Unsung Hero Award this Saturday. And Kelly, if you're at home and still watching us, thank you for sticking with us this late. But thank you for letting this community share in the horrible tragedy that your family encountered 5 years ago. I think that the result of your work has meant that we have a much more in-tune awareness of our surroundings in Bennington. And had Kelly not opened up that tragedy to this community, we would not see the good work that's being done in a bunch of different places. So thank you, Kelly, from me personally.
Do I hear a motion